nation's fastest growing news program for a reason.
Real journalism.
They're all marching down to the White House.
Sounds to me, Ben, like they won't be happy until Israel doesn't exist.
Real American news.
America is under chemical warfare attack. Fentanyl is the weapon.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
I appreciate you guys very, very much.
This is America's Voice Live with Steve Gruber.
Welcome to America's Voice Live on this Monday morning. I'm Terrence Bates. We appreciate you being here with us. It is April 7th. Let's get right into today's top stories. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is at the White House right now meeting with President Trump. It is the second time in 2 months the leaders are sitting down together. It's also a clear shift from the chilly relationship Israel had under Joe Biden. Ahead, the latest on today's meeting in the Oval Office. Plus, the World Series champion LA Dodgers take over the White House before they face the Washington Nationals in the nation's capital tonight. It's one of the many White House events that are keeping President Trump busy today. And then later, the president's 10% tariffs are in effect, but even steeper ones are set to hit later this week. What does that mean for trade and your wallet? All of that and so much more right now on America's Voice Live. President Trump recently rolled out his America First trade policy by implementing reciprocal tariffs on other countries who are charging the U.S. for our goods. The markets have taken a bit of a hit amid the tariff fallout. However, President Trump took to social media encouraging Americans to hang tough, saying that it's not going to be easy, but in the end, it will be historic. Here with me now to discuss this further is Chapwood Investments managing partner Ed Butowski. Ed, good to see you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Terrence.
All right, so let's look at the markets right now. I've been watching them throughout the morning, and they're up and down, but still a much better situation today, or at least at the moment, than what we were dealing with over the weekend and even last week.
Yeah, there's no question about it that things are starting to taper, kind of get better. But yet people have to remember that what's happening is hedge fund managers and big institutions go risk on, meaning they go long a position, or they go risk off. And recently, over the last couple of days, it was a risk off, meaning they just sold everything indiscriminately. And the catalyst for this is the tariffs, but the market was overpriced. So if you were to look at the stock market, it was still overpriced even this morning, but things are now starting to settle down, and I think you're going to start to see this selling subside really soon.
You often hear when you're looking at the stock market that uncertainty can typically impact the stock markets, and I suspect you would say that's a lot of what we saw when it came to the tariffs, but beyond that, there was also emotion that was probably tied to it.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that individuals control the market, but it's really large institutions that do. Individuals represent about 5% of the volume on the stock exchange. 95% of the volume are big, large institutions that really have big, pocketbooks and can sell off, and they don't care about taxes and they don't care about what they're selling. They just sell, and then they'll all get back in. So we'll have a 1,000-point up day pretty soon, and then maybe even a 2,000-point up day, in the near future.
So am I hearing you say that you think the sell-off that we saw over the past couple of days is now coming to an end, and for lack of a better word, the markets are now going to correct themselves here in the next few days?
I do. I truly believe that. I've been at this 35 years, and I've seen this song many, many times, and things get a lot worse. People start to really get to the point where they want to throw up. I'm having clients calling me worried, and that's usually the signal that things are about to be over and that things are going to get better.
What is give me an average of the sort of losses that some of your clients may have seen, or that the markets in general saw over the past couple of days as a result of this? One of the numbers I've heard is about a 6% loss on average. Is that accurate? Is that what you're seeing?
Well, I'm in a lot of utilities, and utilities have not been beat up that badly. So we're holding in there very, very well. But most people are down about 12 to 15%, most other financial advisors' portfolios, because they were involved with high tech and consumer staples and consumer discretionary. So they were long the S&P 500. We were not long the S&P 500. We're mainly in utilities and interest rate sensitive investments. And interest rates, surprisingly, have come lower because during a frightful time, people rush in and buy treasuries, and they have to convert to U.S. dollars to buy treasuries. And those have hung in there really well, and interest rates have dropped. And also oil prices have dropped, which is also a benefit. So there's going to be a lot of benefits that are going to come out of this. But Terrence, the way I like to look at it, it's sort of like getting a nose job for a deviated septum. And at first, you can't breathe very well. And these tariffs are hoping, letting us open up and breathe, a sign of relief in the economy and in the global tariff war. And so right now you have puffy eyes and black eyes, so it's kind of ugly, but at the end you're going to be able to breathe better. You're going to have a much better look at life after this tariff war is over.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd like for you to explain from a professional perspective what tariffs are and why they impact the markets as they do. I think most of us realize, okay, it's basically a tax on goods that we import. Can you take that a little bit deeper for us, if you will, and explain kind of how it really works in real life?
Sure. So let's say that you build a washing machine in Mexico and you're Whirlpool and you want to import it into the United States. The country that's paying that is actually, or the company is Whirlpool is paying that. But Whirlpool is going to pass that cost along to where they built that washing machine in Mexico. So that's going to slow down production, and that's going to hurt the country of Mexico because there's going to be less production. And the idea is to bring that production back to the United States so they don't have to have that tariff. But the company that pays it is Whirlpool, and they pay it to the U.S. government. So the idea that the country of Mexico is paying it is not true, but it is a negative to Mexico when their company is going to then get a bill from Whirlpool for bringing that washing machine into the United States.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And ultimately, Whirlpool in this example passes that cost along to the consumer.
That's correct. And there's only so much they can pass along before somebody doesn't buy it. And that's why there's, questions about earnings. And stocks move based on earnings and expectation of earnings. So stocks have already moved up in anticipation of good earnings. Now this wrench has been thrown in saying, hey, maybe these earnings aren't going to be as good because now we're going to have to get taxed a little bit more because of the tariff. And that's why stocks have sold down, because earnings expectations are going to come down a little bit.
So out of curiosity, in the scenario then, and we already know that the United States has the biggest consumer base in the world, if people are still spending despite the higher prices, does that kind of nullify the tariffs or the impact, if you will, of the tariffs on the market long term? And I get that it's not an immediate fix, but say that's the circumstance, long term, does that nullify the impact of the tariffs on the market?
No, it doesn't nullify it. I mean, it's still a real price that the companies are going to be paying and individuals are going to be paying. It's just a matter of how they diversify that additional cost. But it's a great question. I haven't really thought that through, but I think that's a really, really good question as to, if in fact people continue to buy, does that nullify it? That's a really good question. I don't know.
Okay, no problem. I just got to thinking because I'm the type of person, not that I've got that money, I'm just so lazy that I'm going to buy it if I need it, regardless of how the price is. And I suspect there are other consumers out there as well. Long term, how beneficial do you see the President Trump's, his policy, if you will, on tariffs? Because it seems fundamentally his idea is, okay, we're going to match the tariffs, or we're going to charge other countries the same amount of tariffs that they're charging us or similar in order to spur more industry and investment in the United States, which ultimately will mean that we're making more items, more products here in the U.S.
Yeah, I think in the long run it's going to be a very good move. He's the first president who's had the what to do this, and every president knows that we needed to do this. Even going back to Nancy Pelosi's speech in the 1980s, where she agreed with everything Trump is doing today. So I think it's an excellent thing, but you have to remember that we look at things quarter by quarter because that's how CEOs and CFOs are evaluated. But you have to look at things over a year or 2 or 3 year period to really see the impact of these tariffs and the manufacturing plants that are going to get up and running. So you're not going to see the benefits of this for quite some time, but you have to believe that it's going to be happening.
And what are your thoughts? Will this ship turn around? I think that's the analogy you used at the very beginning. Will this ship turn around in, say, 6 to 8 months, or will this literally be an administration-long thing, 3 to 4 years potentially?
No, I think when you talk about the investment markets, I think we're literally days away from big gains. I do not see this being a major economic distress for the United States. I really don't. I just think that with computer systems and communication systems today, things happen a lot quicker and they're a lot more ferocious. And then you see it on the media, so you create this frenzy and everyone's talking about it. But, if this is a normal correction, it's just happening very quickly. And I think that the reaction is going to turn around very, very quickly as well. And we're going to have positive days and everything's going to be bright and sunny and shiny.
Well, Ed, you had me at big days and big gains. I'm hoping that my portfolio will experience some big gains. But are you expected those days of big gains to be sustained, or will it be a flash in the pan and then we kind of correct and are back at where we were, say, last week?
I think you're going to start to see the focus go on to first quarter earnings. And I think first quarter earnings are going to be very good. And I think the market's going to rise because of it. And I think we're going to just look back and realize that this was just a couple of bad days in the market. And that's it.
From your lips to God's ears, I hope you are right, Ed. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
You too. Thanks, Terrence.
All right. Thanks so much. Ed Butowski there joining us. All right, folks, don't go anywhere because we've got more news of the day coming your way here on America's Voice Live. It's right after this break. Welcome back, everyone. We appreciate you being here with us for America's Voice Live. It has already been a very busy day at the White House. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue as we speak. In fact, our cameras were rolling as he pulled up and was greeted by President Trump. You can see him getting out of the truck here, and he and Mr. Trump shaking hands before walking inside and then meeting privately. The two are set to have a joint press availability here in just moments, and we, of course, will take you there live the moment it happens. But first, let's get you over to Harley Lipsum. He is a foreign policy expert and board member of Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Mr. Lipsum, welcome to the show. And just a heads up, we may end up having to interrupt this interview because we are going to go to Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump's meeting there in the Oval Office. But talk about what you see as the biggest issue to be addressed between the two. The low-hanging fruit and most of the focus here in the United States, of course, is the tariffs. But there's so much more to talk about. Obviously, Gaza and then Iran and its potential for nuclear weapon, I would think, would be front and center.
I think the big issue is Iran more than anything, even more than Gaza, because Gaza, we know Israel's going to
I'm
go
sorry,
in
Mr.
more
Lipsum. I apologize. I've got to interrupt you. President Trump and Prime Minister are speaking right now in the Oval Office. Let's listen in, sir.
By far the best president that Israel has ever even thought of seeing. And it's an honor to be so, and to be so thought of. And many friends in Israel. They are not in an easy area. It doesn't go easy, but we are helping them. And likewise, they've been helping us very much. And so we'll see how it all works out. But we had great discussions today, I think, on the obvious subject of Iran, and also the less obvious subject with respect to Israel, and that's trade. And I think the Prime Minister is going to tell you a little bit about trade and what they're doing for the United States. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Benjamin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Don. Thank you. Mr. President, I want to first thank you for inviting me again to the White House. You've been a remarkable friend from the state of Israel. You stand by us. You're standing with us. You are a great, great champion of our alliance. And you actually do the things that you say you do. And I think that people respect that enormously. I certainly do, and the people of Israel do. And I think the Jewish people do as well. We just saw your representative in the Department of Justice fighting anti-Semitism, standing up for Israel in international forums. I just want you to know from the heart, it's deeply, deeply appreciated. As you said, we had the opportunity to talk today about many subjects. First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the President a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak to Secretary Lutnick yesterday. We talked about how we could effect this quickly, and I hope to bring a solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions. We're not talking about just words. We're talking about results. And those results are going to come. That's the first.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, what about the hostages deal?
Well,
what about the hostages?
I didn't finish.
Okay.
Let me begin. We spoke about not only the hostages, but about Gaza. The hostages obviously is a human story of just unbearable agony. I speak to the families. I spoke to them yesterday. Spoke to another one when I was in Hungary before I came here. I speak to them every day. They're in agony. The hostages are in agony, and we want to get them all out. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's very able representative, helped us get a deal that got 25 out. We're working now on another deal that we hope will succeed. And we're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil tyranny of Hamas in Gaza, and enabling the people of Gaza to freely make a choice to go wherever they want. I mean, they should have that choice. And the president put forward a vision discussed as well, including the countries that might be amenable and are amenable to accepting Palestinians of their free choice if they choose to go there. And I think that's the second thing that we discussed. But the hostages came right on top. We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attacking Israel. Turkey is a country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can have a better interlocutor than the president of the United States for this purpose. And of course, we also discussed Iran. Look, we're both united in the goal that Iran does not ever get nuclear weapons. If it could be done diplomatically in a full way, the way it was done in Libya, I think that would be a good thing. But whatever happens, we have to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. That's the end of my speech.
Mr. President,
We're having direct talks with, We're having direct talks with Iran. And they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it. But it's getting to be very dangerous territory. And hopefully those talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. We hope that's going to happen. And we had just a lot of good talks on a lot of things. I appreciate very much what you said about the tariffs. We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. We can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things. I mean, look at what's happened with our last president, where he allowed millions of people to come into our country with an open border. Who would want an open border? How stupid is that? But he allowed millions and millions of people, and of the millions, and I think it was often taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things. I mean, look at what's happened with our last president, where he allowed millions of people to come into our country with an open border. Who would want an open border? How stupid was that? But he allowed millions and millions of people, and of the millions, and I think it was 21 million people, but let's say 3 of them were serious criminals, serious murderers and drug dealers and gang members and people from jails. All the jails emptied out right into our country, right along the open border on Mexico, generally the Mexico. They came in from Canada too, by the way, a lot. But generally speaking, on the southern border. And what a shame it is that we are now working very hard to get them out, get the criminals out, get the murderers out, the drug dealers, the mentally insane, get them out. They dropped the mentally insane in our country too. And this was all done by the Biden administration. It's a disgrace that we have to work so hard. And then we have judges that try and protect these people, but they didn't protect us when the people were being let in. But to get them out is never easy with these people. So I think we're doing a great job. The border is the best it's ever been. It's even as strong as it was. I had a great, solid border. I think it might even be tougher right now and stronger. So people are coming into our country, but they're coming in legally. We have a legal process, and we have that moving along properly, because we need people to come into our country, but we want people that can love our country and cherish our country. So that's where we are. And with that, any questions?
Mr. President, the European Union to the markets today And would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country, because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan, and they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China. But they can't do this. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it, because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it. Yeah.
Two questions. Do you expect any of these deals to be made before April 9th? And secondly, there have been some mixed messages from your administration. You're talking about negotiations, and yet others in your administration are saying that these tariffs are actually permanent. What is the action?
Well, they can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations, because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. We need open borders. You know, we almost had a deal with China where we're going to open up China. It was almost done. Some of you remember it during my first term, and it was very disappointing. We ended up making a great deal. $50 billion worth of product was sold. $50 billion. You'd like that in Israel. And I made that deal, but it wasn't the deal that I wanted. It was the deal that I wanted was that, plus they were going to open up China so that our companies could go into China and compete with other countries and China for for a large number of people. And at the very end, that deal was terminated, and we went to a piece of the deal. And so there are a lot of things outside of tariffs, but tariffs are very important. But there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China's essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. And what they do is they charge tariffs so that if you sell cars or if you sell anything, nobody's going to buy it because the price is out of control. But that's true with a lot of other countries also. So we're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country. And if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them. They're not going to be allowed to participate in the United States. This gentleman is all day long.
Mr. President, thank you for the chance. Many of Palestinian Americans who voted for you and not for Biden because you've promised them to end the war in Gaza.
Very honored by that vote, too.
The war is still going on and there's no hostage deal. Do you have any update on that?
Well, I'd like to see the war stop, and I think the war will stop at some point that won't be in the too distant future. Right now we have a problem with hostages. We're trying to get the hostages out. We got quite a few of them out, but it's a long process. It shouldn't be that long. We have a big problem that we've done. I think I'll ask Pete to maybe talk about it for a second, because a lot of people are asking. The Houthis, we've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've really damaged them badly. These were people shooting down ships and other things, by the way, flying objects like airplanes. And we've put a major hurt on the Houthis, which nobody's been able to do. We've really hit them hard, and they know it, and they don't know what to do. And it's every night, night after night. And we've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that, but they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough, but they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open, air defense assets. We are not going to relent. And it's only to get more unrelenting until the Houthis declare they will stop shooting at our ships. And we've been very clear with the Iranians as well. They should not continue to provide support to the Houthis, and that message has been made very clear. So we have a lot more options and a lot more pressure to apply, and we know, because we see the reports, how devastating this campaign has been in them, and we will not relent.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military, and despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation we've ever been involved in, that short period of time in Afghanistan. What a disgrace that was, but left a lot of our military behind. Left. You see them in their annual parades, where they're parading trucks that are armor-plated and different things that they can't. But it's many billions of dollars we left behind. But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion, because we rebuilt the military during my first term. And we have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'd like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong, because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military. We're cutting other things that were under DOGE, but under a lot of other. When you look at a woman getting $2 billion for environmental, and it had nothing to do with environmental, and they had $100 in the bank, and they give her $2 billion. Many of those cases, all that stuff is going to be cut out. But we are getting a very, very powerful military. We have things under order now, the likes of which we've never had before. We've never had the kind of aircraft, the kind of missiles, anything that we have ordered. And it's in many ways too bad that we have to do it, because hopefully we're not going to have to use it. But the military is very, very powerful, and it's going to remain that way.
How do you... Mr. President,
yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about Iran, because this is the first time we hear that the U.S. is having a direct contact with the Iranians. Is it possible to give us some more information at what level the U.S. is represented?
High level, very high level.
And
we're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates, or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'll be really great for Iran, I can tell you that. But hopefully, we're not going to have to get into that. We are meeting very importantly on Saturday at almost the highest level, and we'll see how it works out. Please.
How do you ensure, Mr. President, that these tariffs don't drive U.S. trading partners into the hands of the Chinese?
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. If they want to be in the hands of the U.S., they don't want to be in the hands of the Chinese. And the Chinese have turned out to be really not very good at that. People that are with us, they're with us, but we cannot be taken advantage of any longer. I used to watch these deals for years. I've been talking about it for years. I've been talking about it for 35 years, how our country is being ripped off. I mean, 30 years ago it was Japan, then it was something else, then it was another group, then it was China. China's doing the best job of it, frankly. And it's just not going to happen, not going to happen.
The EU has said that they have offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough?
Well, the EU, no, it's not. The EU has been very tough over the years. I always say it was formed to really do damage to the United States in trade. That's the reason it was formed. It was formed with all of the countries from Europe, I guess most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they formed together to create a little bit of a monopoly situation, to create a unified force against the United States for trade. So they have NATO, which is largely the same countries, and they took advantage of us dollar-wise and militarily until I got there. I was able to get $600 billion from NATO, where they paid NATO because most of these nations weren't even paying. We were paying for NATO, so we're paying them to guard them militarily, and they're screwing us on trade. So that's not a good combination. So now it's really turned around. It's the opposite, and the European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically. And yet they send millions of cars in a year, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BMWs. They're sending millions and millions of cars into the U.S., but we don't have a car that's been sold to the European Union or other places, but let's go for the European Union. And it's not going to be that way. It's got to be fair and reciprocal. It's got to be fair. It's not fair. We have a deficit with the European Union of $350 billion. And it's going to disappear fast. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that that can disappear easily and quickly is they're going to have to buy our energy from us because they need it. They're going to have to buy it from us. They can buy it. We can knock off $350 billion in 1 week. They have to buy and commit to buy a like amount of energy. And we have that. We have more energy than any country in the world. I don't know if you know that. He knows everything, but the one thing he may not know, we have more energy than any country in the world. We have more of every kind of energy, every form of energy, from oil and gas to coal. And people talk about, I call it beautiful, clean coal. As you know, Germany is opening up a coal plant a week. They tried the windmills and it didn't work. They tried all the other solutions and they were ready to go out of business. Now they're doing a coal plant a week. China is now up to 2 coal plants. They're opening 2 major coal plants every single week in China, all over China, and then we're not allowed to use coal. Well, we have clean, beautiful coal more than anybody else. We have oil and gas more than anybody else. We have the most energy of any country in the world, including Saudi Arabia, including everybody, by a lot. And I took it to number 1. We were number 3, and I took it to number 1 during my administration. And the reason that we were hurt so badly and the reason that we went into such incredible inflation during Biden is energy. It was also their bad spending, but energy, because they played around with this incredible thing that we had built, this administration had built, and the energy costs went through the roof. And when that went up, everything else followed. Now, if you look at what's happening, you're going to see this today. I said we're going to try and get groceries down, right? An old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term. Eggs. So when I got in, the press went absolutely crazy the first week. They said, eggs have quadrupled in price. I said, I just got here. Tell me about it. And Brooke Rollins and our team did a great job, and eggs are down now 79%, and they're all over the place. And this was a problem that somebody else would have taken a long time to cure. We have energy is down. We have interest rates are down. We have groceries, meaning food is down. We have everything is down at levels that nobody ever thought possible. Energy looks like it's going to be in the $2.50 a gallon range and maybe below that for a car. So for gasoline. So we're really doing amazing. I mean, we're cutting prices because prices got so high, people couldn't live. I mean, the prices for groceries, the prices for standard groceries, standard things were going through the roof. They couldn't live. And now those prices are coming down. So call them groceries, but that's down, energy's down, and interest rates are down. Everything's down. And the interest rates, the beauty there is when we refinance debt, debt's become such a big factor in this country. We're going to start paying debt off with tariffs and other things. But it's such a big factor because the interest rate's so high. Well, now that's coming way down. So our budget's going to look a lot better because interest costs are way down. And I guess I've done that.
Many Israelis are watching you now on live show. What is your specific way of getting the hostages out from the horrific captivity?
We are trying very hard to get the hostages out. We're looking at another ceasefire. We'll see what happens. But we want to get the hostages out. The Israeli people want the hostages out more than anything. They want the hostages out. This man is working very hard with us to do that. I mean, I don't know. I hope he's being appreciated because he's been a great leader. He's working very, very hard on the hostages and many other things. And there are plenty of things you have to work on. It's a tough place in the world, isn't it?
I have a good partner.
Yeah, you do have a good partner, and so do we. We're working very hard on the hostages.
If you're going to negotiate a new deal with Iran, can you elaborate how it's going to be more effective than the JCPOA?
Well, I can't really say that, but I think it'll be different and maybe a lot stronger. But they were so happy when we made that first deal because we did get a lot out. I had people right in this office, this beautiful Oval Office. There came in 10 people, hostages, you know that. And I said to them, so how was it? And the stories they told me, I mean, as an example, I said to them, was there any sign of love? You were there, 10 people. It's only 10, but it's pretty representative. Did the Hamas show any signs of, help or liking you? Did they wink at you? Did they give you a piece of bread extra? Did they give you a meal on the side, you think of doing? Like what happened in Germany, what happened elsewhere. People would try and help people that were in unbelievable distress. They said no. I said all of them. I said, did they ever wink at you like you'll be okay? You're going to be okay? No, they didn't do that. They'd slap us. The hatred is unbelievable. And the lives, they lived in a pipe, not really a tunnel, it was a pipe. And they always thought they were suffocating, they were going to suffocate. And then they'd open up the pipe and it was like 3.5 feet high. This isn't, we hear tunnel is bad, but pipes are worse. And the stories I heard were incredible. But I just said, was there any sign of potential love or affection? And there were none whatsoever. It was amazing to me. There was nothing like, here, take this, it's a little extra meal or something. They lived like hell. I don't know. They were amazing to me because they seemed to be pretty normal. They weren't scarred, but I guarantee underneath they have to be scarred. And one was there for 356 days. Another was there for about 180 days, a long time. These are people that have been really, really horribly treated. I've never seen anything like it, actually. I was very surprised to hear the answer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there 2 or 3 countries that are on your list that you feel are farther along in getting their tariffs lowered?
I think there are many that want to get rid of tariffs right now. European Union, I mean, as badly as they've treated us, they brought their car tariffs essentially off. I guess they brought it down to 2.5, and I hear maybe to nothing. But it's not only tariffs, it's non-monetary tariffs. It's tariffs where they put things on that make it impossible for you to sell a car. It's not a money thing. They make it so difficult, the standards and the tests. They drop a bowling ball on the top of your car from 20 feet up in the air, and if there's a little dent, they say, no, I'm sorry, your car doesn't qualify. When the same car from Germany or anything would dent likewise, unless you can have an army tank, it's going to dent. So they come up with rules and regulations that are just designed for one reason, that you can't sell your product in those. countries, and we're not going to let that happen. Those are called non-monetary barriers. They make barriers that are so tough that it's impossible to qualify. So tariffs are a big part of it, but there's another big part of it, and that's barriers. They also do something else. They manipulate their currency, and they drive it down. They want to have low currencies. It sounds better to have a high currency, a strong dollar or whatever, but they bring their currency down, and when it competes with our currency, it's very hard to sell a tractor. It's very hard to sell product because their currency is low and ours is much higher relatively. And so it makes it very hard. I speak to a lot of companies that do business, tractor companies, and they say it's so hard to sell because what they've done is they've lowered the yen or they've lowered the yuan or they've lowered their currency so that it's very hard to compete. We don't want that either. So we have a lot of things that we're talking about, but we're going to fix it properly, and it's going to be fair to everybody. And in the end, I think we're going to have a world that does a lot better, but they have to respect the United States. And nobody but me would do this. Nobody but me would do this. It would be nice to serve, a nice, easy term. But we have an opportunity to change the fabric of our country. We have an opportunity to reset the table on trade. We lose billions of dollars. We lose close to $2 trillion a year on trade. We lose $1 trillion a year to China. $1 trillion. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year on trade to China. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars overall, probably close to $2 trillion. Why would we do that? Number one, why would we do that? And then you have to say, is it sustainable? Then you hear about all of the people that say, well, deficits. If we have a deficit with the country, or if the country has a big surplus with us, like China has a massive surplus, that they take and they spend on their military. Well, we don't want that. I don't want them to take $500, $600 billion a year and spend it on their military. I don't want them spending money on their military. And I shouldn't have to spend money. We shouldn't have to spend it either. Because, hopefully, and I said this to President Xi, hopefully it's money that we're never going to use. In other words, because we're not going to use those incredible weapons that we have and that they have. We don't want that. So it's going to be very interesting. It's the only chance our country will have to reset the table. Because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end. But we are making tremendous progress with a lot of countries, and the countries that really took advantage of us are now saying, please negotiate. You know why? Because they're getting beaten badly because of what's happening. They're getting beaten badly. They're being devalued as countries. But it's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade. And when we do, we're going to come out unbelievably well. We're going to have a strong country economically again. And we're going to have those factories that are empty all over the United States. We've lost 90,000 plants and factories. Think of this, 90,000, you wouldn't think it's possible, 90,000 plants and factories since NAFTA, which was, by the way, the worst trade deal ever developed, ever had by any country anywhere, NAFTA. And I terminated NAFTA. Everybody said it would be impossible. And I terminated it through Congress. We terminated it. You had to get it through Congress. It was a trap. It was a horrible thing. And we got it done. And we went to the USMCA, which was much better. The problem is they cheat. They cheat like crazy. Canada cheats. Mexico cheats. Just one of those things. But we are resetting a table, and we're going to have great trade. And we're going to have a very strong country. Our country is going to be at a level that has maybe never been, or maybe, our country was the strongest, believe it or not, from 1870 to 1913. You know why? It was all tariff-based. We had no income tax. Then in 1913, some genius came up with the idea of let's charge the people of our country, not foreign countries that are ripping off our country. And the country was never that kind of wealth. We had so much wealth, we didn't know what to do with our money. We had meetings, we had committees, and these committees worked tirelessly to study one subject. We have so much money. What are we going to do with it? Who are we going to give it to? And I hope we're going to be in that position again.
Mr. President, do you plan to reduce the tariffs that your government put on Israeli goods, 17%?
On where?
On Israeli goods, the 17%. Do you plan
Well,
to
we're
reduce
talking about a whole new trade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. You know, we give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of, and we give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe if I said we give Afghanistan a lot of money, did you? Because that was a Biden deal, another Biden deal. Not only did he embarrass us with that, but they give them billions of dollars, Afghanistan, right? So, but no, we take good care of our friends, and we don't take care of our enemies. We're not taking care of our enemies anymore, but we do take care of our friends.
For the Times of Israel, the IDF is fighting again in the Gaza Strip. I myself might be called up in a month. Do you think that's the way to pressure Hamas to get to a deal? And do you think blocking humanitarian aid is also an effective pressure tactic?
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in, but having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Because right now, all it is for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place. It's you know what I call it, a great location that nobody wants to live in, because they really don't. And when they have good living, real living, where Hamas and all of the problems they have, the level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't have given it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good.
Is the immigration, Mr. President, is the immigration plan still on the agenda?
Which immigration?
From Gaza. From Gaza.
All it is a concept that I had that I think is good, and now people are copying it. You know, maybe you want to tell people are talking about the Trump plan. Gee, why don't we do that? Would you like to answer that question?
I think what the president talked about is, first of all, to give people a choice. You know, Gazans were closed in. And any other place, including in arenas of battle, I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or any other place, people could leave. Gaza was the only place where they locked them in. We didn't lock them in. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice? Now, we've been talking, including over lunch, about some countries, I won't go into them right now, that are saying, you know, if Gazans want to leave, we want to take them in. And I think this is the right thing to do. If you give, you know, it's going to take years to rebuild Gaza. In the meantime, people can have an option. The president has a vision. Countries are responding to that vision. We're working on it. I hope we'll have good news for you.
I will say, people really do love that vision. It's a long-term vision, but so importantly is to have that be a safe field, because you're right smack in the middle of the Middle East. You're right along Israel. It should have never, ever been given away. It shouldn't have been given away by Israel. I don't know why they did it. I mean, I do know why, because they were promised peace, but that didn't work out too well, because it's one of the most dangerous pieces of land anywhere in the world. Gaza is one of the most dangerous places in the world. So they gave it away for a good intention, and it didn't work out that way. And a lot of people like my concept, but, you know, there are other concepts that I like, too. And there are some concepts I don't like. You know what I don't like? The way it is now. Because right now it's a dangerous death trap, Gaza. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Can you talk a little bit about your potential meeting with Vladimir Putin? Do you still plan to meet with him? Could that happen in Saudi Arabia? And maybe you could elaborate as well a little bit on not providing tariffs on Russia, sir.
So the reason we're not talking about tariffs with Russia is because we're not doing business essentially with Russia. because they're in a war. And I'm not happy about what's going on with the bombing, because they're bombing like crazy right now. They're bombing. I don't know what's happening there. That's not a good situation. So we're meeting with Russia. We're meeting with Ukraine. And we're getting sort of close. But I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on the last week or so. Horrible. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing.
Can countries negotiate to get below 10%?
In terms of tariffs?
In terms of tariffs, yes.
Look, we've been ripped off and taken advantage of for 40, 50, 60 years. And the reason we got ripped off and the way they did it was tariffs. They would charge tariffs, massive numbers of dollars. And when you look at China, when I took over, it was at $507 billion they were making. I call it making. A lot of people say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Having a surplus means a lot, in my opinion. It's almost like a profit or loss statement. And when I took over, it was $507 billion that China was. This is originally, first term. And we were very, very tough on them because they were taking that money and they were building a military with it. Then when Biden came in, he let him get away with murder. He had no idea. I'll tell you what, that man had no idea what was happening, whether it was the border or China or anything else. He had no idea what was going on. And they went wild. China went wild. And the money they make is ridiculous, okay? It's just not going to happen. And hopefully we'll get along with China. If we do, that's great. And if we don't, that's okay, too. But we can't let that continue, because that's an abuse. They abused the poor people that sat in the seat. That poor Biden, he was abused by them. They took advantage of him. And I'm surprised, they have smart people. They were radical left lunatics, but they're smart. I'm surprised they'd allow that to take, to happen. But we are going to bring great trade, and we're going to be fair to other countries. And I will say this, virtually every country wants to negotiate. If I didn't do what I did over the last couple of weeks, you wouldn't have anybody wants to negotiate. We would have gone to these countries who want to talk, and they were, well, we don't want to talk. Now they're coming to us. They're offering things like even Bibi, and this is unrelated because it's a different kind of a relationship, but he started off our conversation today that he's cutting all of the tariffs, he's cutting everything, he's going to get down to a free base, he's going to do things that, in all fairness, other countries, if they said that, would have never even thought about doing it. Now they're offering things to us that we would have never even thought of asking them for, because they're experiencing a lot of hurt. And the hurt is that they've taken advantage of us, and we finally fought back. Tariffs will make this country very rich. We're rich anyway, but we're rich in a certain way. We have $36 trillion in debt. I want to get rid of it, and we can do it quickly with proper deals. So when countries don't allow us to sell our product, but we allow them to sell their product, when they charge us massive amounts of money for the privilege of going into their country, those days are over. Okay.
Go ahead.
Me?
Sure.
Me? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. On Iran, two questions, please. First, if you can give us more details about where the meeting on Saturday is going to take place.
I can't tell you that. I can just tell you there's a major meeting going on between us and Iran, and that'll take place on Saturday, and it's at top level.
And the second question about this. A lot of people think that those talks are not going to lead anywhere because the Iranians will never give up.
Sure. I think that's a possibility, too.
If diplomacy fails, is the United States, under your leadership, ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
It's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So
can't have it. Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it. But I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that, too, as part of this later on down the line.
but Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case. Yeah.
Mr. President, on manufacturing,
Mr. President, was October 7th the death blow of the two-state solution, and would you consider classifying the Palestinian Authority as a terrorist organization for its continued pay-for-slay terror financing payments?
So October 7th was a horrible day that some people, they deny it. Now, I can't believe they deny it from the standpoint of it. They do it because they think it's good politically. But I've seen the tapes. I've seen things that you don't want to see. October 7th was a horrible day, and it will go down as one of the really bad days in the history of the world. It was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. And they grabbed some of these people. I'll give you an example. When I was with the 10 hostages a few weeks ago, I said, so how many are there? 59. I said, oh, so 59, so we can get 59. They sort of knew the territory pretty good. And I said, how are they doing? They said, well, only 24 are living, the rest are dead. And these are young people largely. Young people don't die. You know, young people have an amazing ability to live. They can live through horrible things. But these are young people. And when they said that 24 are living and the rest are dead. And, you know, I've had parents come up, Israeli parents, largely. We have some Americans, and I guess we have one left, Alex. We have the one left. But I've had Israeli parents come up to me at events and say, my son is there. I said, well, how's he doing? Well, he's dead. But would you do me the biggest favor ever? Could you bring his body back home? They talked about a young dead boy and a young dead girl like they were living. And that could have something to do with religion. That could have something to do with, I guess, maybe any parent would be. But I was surprised. And they said, sir, my son is dead. It is just as important to bring that body back home. I asked that question as if he were alive. So you have a lot of them dead, and we'll be able to bring them back. But it's a horrible thing that's happened. These are largely young people, some old ones too, frankly, and those people have lived in hell. When they came off, the second group that came out, they looked like they just got out of a concentration camp. They looked exactly like the pictures that I'd see from the 1940s, the concentration camps. And then they got a little bit better, you know, but that second group, those people came out, and I said, this is unbelievable. We're going back into a chapter in history that is one of the worst ever. It's really very bad. Okay?
Mr. President, thank you. You've said it could take 2 years to get American manufacturing fully up to speed in response to these tariffs. What happens in the meantime? Should Americans be prepared potentially for years?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happens. We have now $7 trillion. Think of this, $7 trillion of commitments from companies wanting to go in, from Apple to many, many companies.
But that takes time.
Many from Taiwan. What?
It takes time to
Of course it takes. Well, are you asking me a question, or are you telling me? Yeah, it takes time. You know, you got to build a thing called a factory. You have to build your energy. You have to do a lot of things. I'm giving them energy. You know, we're going to let them build their own power plants. They'll be their own. Essentially, they're going to be in charge of the power plant because our power is not reliable enough. You have a grid that's old and susceptible to a lot of things, including bombing and weather and a lot of other things. And we're going to give them record timing in terms of approvals of electric plants. Most of them want to build electric plants. We need massive amounts of electricity if we're going to compete with China and others. And interestingly, we're way ahead right now in the AI race with China. But the way we lose that race is if we can't give them electric. But we have more plants being built. We have everything. We're doing so great. And we want to keep it that way. And tariffs will be an important part of it. But one of the other things, Lee Zeldin's doing a fantastic job, head of environmental protection. And he's doing very rapid approvals for people to get, for big companies that are going to build a plant that's going to cost billions of dollars. And we're going to get them their approvals. They have to be environmentally perfect, everything good, but they're going to be in record time, a matter of months versus a matter of many, many years. Okay?
But in the meantime,
Liza Rozovsky from Haaretz. Turkey claims it will stabilize the situation in Syria.
Turkey?
Yeah. Israel doesn't want Turkey to influence Syria. What do you think? Do you think Turkey's influence in Syria can actually make it a better, more peaceful country, or vice versa?
Well, I have great relations with a man named Erdogan. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
And I happen to like him, and he likes me, and I know the press will get very angry. He likes Erdogan, but I do, and he likes me, and we've never had a problem, and we've gone through a lot, and we've never had a problem. We've always gotten, as you remember, we got our minister back from Turkey. You remember that? And this was a big deal at the time, and we got him back. And I told the prime minister, I said, just, Bibi, if you have a problem with Turkey, I really think I'm going to be able to work it out. You know, I have a very, very good relationship with Turkey and with their leader, and I think we'll be able to work it out. So I hope that's not going to be a problem. I don't think it will be a problem. Now, with that being said, I believe it was Turkey, and I said that to him. I said it. I said, congratulations. You've done what nobody's been able to do in 2,000 years. You've taken over Syria with different names, but same thing. I said, you've taken it over. He's taken it over through surrogates. He goes, no, it was not me. I said, it was you. But that's okay. You don't have to say, well, sort of maybe it was me. Okay. But what he did, he said, look, he's a tough guy, and he's very smart. And he did something that nobody was able to do. You know, you got to hand it to him. Any problem that you have with Turkey, I think I can solve. I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, folks, there it is. The Oval Office with Bibi Netanyahu, President Trump, Marco Rubio's there, Pete Hegseth, a couple other cabinet secretaries in the room as well. And we had the camera inside that room. You know, they talked about the meeting between the two leaders, and then Trump opened up questions to the media, to the U.S. and the Israeli media, and immediately it was like, jump on with tariffs. And I'm watching the markets trade while this conversation is going on. And the first question was, would you be open to pausing this push on the tariff, the tariffs that you've announced? And watching the market, it was down about 300 at the time. He said, we're not going to do that. It immediately tanked down 800 right away. So my point is, these markets are so jittery. Now woke up this morning, market was down another 1,200 on top of the 2,250 on Friday and the 1,600 on Thursday. We've lost about $10 trillion in market wealth, globally, but certainly the U.S. stock market as well. I want to show you something very, very interesting. During the trading day today, again, everyone's focusing on, will he pause these tariffs? There's a clear cause and effect. He instituted the tariff numbers, market tanked. No question about it. He's got a plan. He wants to bring manufacturing here. But I will tell you, everyone's waiting to see if he blinks or if he pauses. Here's what happened. Let's roll a soundbite of CNBC during the day, and Reuters both announced that there was some sort of pause in the tariff. And watch what happened to the market. Watch those charts when we roll this soundbite. Take a listen.
I think we can go with this headline. Apparently, Hassett's been saying that Trump will consider a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except for China.
Except for China.
Oh, well,
that's
huge.
I mean, that changes the game.
We'll try
and
source that exactly in terms of where that's coming from. But to your point, longer term, let's say, okay, we get a 90-day pause. I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts about credibility.
Yeah, and the reason keep that up there because just keep that. Because see that chart right there. Watch the S&P. Watch the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Nasdaq as well. Those were all negative. You can see that line. That would be break even. That line straight across. That would be where the market finished on Friday. So they were getting slammed. Here, especially Dow Jones Industrial was down 1,800 points at one point today. This rumor comes out, immediately shoots up to plus 500 points. That's 2,000-point move. That's probably a $4 trillion equity move in people's 401ks, people's investments, and it was all just a rumor. When it was within 5 minutes, they discounted it just as a rumor. Market crashed again. We went right back down 1,200 points. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, these markets are very jittery. They're very nervous about the effect of this global tariff that we're putting on every single country we do business with. It's a very nervous market. I'm out here saying this, and I'm a free marketeer. I've said it with Bannon. I've said it with everyone. I hate when government gets involved in monetary policy and certainly involved in our markets, our free markets. We let them fly. And that's what's happening right here. Government's getting involved. I hope I'm wrong. I hope for the sake of the country, I'm pulling for it to work. I hope Trump's right. I hope Trump sees something that a lot of us are missing here. And I'm hoping like beyond hope, I'm wrong. And again, I would just tell you, this feels like a Howard Lutnick thing. I don't think this is Trump. I could be wrong, but I think it is a Howard Lutnick thing, and I really have never liked nor trusted Mr. Howard Lutnick. Call me crazy. Sorry about that. Okay, Meadow, you say who's ready? I heard you say someone's ready. Who do we have?
Brian Glenn is ready.
Oh, Brian Glenn. Oh, this is great. Let's bring in Rav's chief White House correspondent to give us his take on what's going on. Brian, hey, good to have you. I guess you were inside the Oval just moments ago. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's right, Eric. We just scrambled out of the Oval to come here. We're just outside the West Wing where Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to pull out. He'll probably pull out during our show. I tell you what, let me just step out of the way real quickly, and I'll show what I'm looking at. Eric, you know this entrance very familiar. This is the West Wing. They wrapped up about a 45-minute press conference, opened up the questions, as you could expect. With tariffs, also, possible engagements with Iran on some of the negotiations there. Just the border, it was kind of all wrapped up.
So can I jump in, Brian? Allow me to jump in. I think it's extremely important. I mean, I was all ears on the tariff questions. Kind of surprised there were only a handful. Thought there'd be a lot more. I'm glad he answered it, and he was very, very succinct, saying, no, we're not pausing. We're going to stay with this. But I think that was the other breaking news with the discussion about the sit down with Iran and how he framed it, Brian, right? When he said, Iran better come to the table, they better be okay, because if it's not good, it won't be very good for Iran going forward. Any idea what he may have been alluding to?
Well, a lot of people would love to follow up on that question, and it wasn't an opportunity given on that. But who knows? I mean, look, I know one thing, that Americans do not want to engage in any type of military action with Iran. That's something I don't think we want to. No one wants to get involved with another conflict. But although that answer would lead someone to think that would at least be a possibility of some type of action. But that was definitely a question that stood out from today. And I agree with you. I thought there was tariff questions for the most part, but it wasn't tariff heavy as I thought. Obviously, the hostages came up a couple times during that press conference, asking when do you think they could be returned. Obviously, President Trump responded with, well, as soon as we can, possibly. It's one of the things he's committed to, Eric.
Yeah, and famously, Israel was the ones who took out Iranian capability the first time around in the 80s when they were getting close to having a nuclear weapon, and no one wanted to mess with Iran, and Israel came through in the middle of the night one night and just decimated their nuclear program. And I think it's very interesting that this conversation was just had with Bibi Netanyahu sitting next to Trump, and maybe it was a hat tip, like, if we can't get this done, do your thing, so to speak. And again, that's not for speculating, but it was interesting that came up. I was really, really tuned into that. It was a good one. So we will.
Do you know what's interesting, Eric? If I can say real quickly. I was talking to some Israeli media that was before we went into the Oval Office, and they were telling me they don't often get to ask these types of questions to the Prime Minister that often. So they looked at today's event being a special moment for them to ask those questions in front of President Trump and also to address President Trump as well. I thought that from a media perspective was very interesting.
Yeah, that was very nice. I thought he was very, very, very warm to the Israeli media. That was very nice of Trump to do that. Brian, I got to go. We're up against that break, the hard break. Brian, Glenn, always good having you, brother. Talk to you again soon. And folks, we will be back in 2.5 minutes. NASA, Bahamas, very nice. Some say one of the more corrupt places on the planet, but it's a beautiful place to visit once in a while. And you can get there by boat from this place in a couple hours. You've got a boat that'll do 45 knots or so. All right, folks, welcome back. So many people watching today feel like they've lost a part of themselves, whether it's the energy that they used to have, the hobbies they once loved, or even just the spark. John Jubilee, founder of Energized Health, is here to tell us how to get that back. Thank you for joining us, John. So what do you say to the folks who are wondering if it's possible to get their mojo back, their energy?
Well, Eric, I say to people that it's been the joy of our life for the last 28 years. Yeah, that's right. I said 28 years, more than maybe some of our viewers have been alive today. We've been helping people to get off all their medication, restore their health, get back their mojo. For the men, ladies, you got to get your queen back, and you say, well, how do I do that? Well, isn't it interesting, the mythological fountain of youth? Everybody's looking for the fountain of youth, but there really is a fountain of youth. It's a scientific fountain of youth, and it's called intracellular hydration. And I like to make things simple for people, Eric, and I would just encourage people to just envision and answer this question. What's the difference between a raisin and a grape? It's just hydration. It's hydration. So one of them is shriveled up and looks gnarly, and one of them looks beautiful and smooth. And that's the difference between a raisin and a grape is intracellular hydration. And that could be your heart. That could be your brain. That could be your thyroid, your kidney, your liver. When your organs are shriveled up like raisins, they're not optimized. there's a reflection of what you look like on the inside, on the outside. So anybody that's ever had a plant, if you don't water a plant, even for 1 week, what's it begin to do? It begins to shrivel up.
Hey, John,
so we're human.
So you talk a lot about this intercellular transformation. How does something as simple as well, I don't even know if it's simple, but how does it help you reclaim more of who you feel like you used to be? How does that process work?
Yeah, so think about it. God made the earth, it's mostly water. And when he made humans, we're mostly water. Or I should say this, we're supposed to be mostly water. So when we're not mostly what we're supposed to be because of dehydration, we lose our energy. So just imagine your brain is supposed to be 70% water, but if you lose just 10% of your hydration, you can lose half of your neurotransmitters and brain synapses. So now you start losing your memory, you start losing your energy, you start losing your willpower, your drive, your mojo, your queen. But with intercellular hydration, you can, through neuroplasticity, grow back those neurotransmitters, those neural pathways. You get your energy, your vibrancy, your memory, and then the side effect is your metabolism resets like back when you were 17 years old. So you lose that fat that's been dragging you down. You regrow your cartilage in your knees, your hips, and your joints, where you get a pep in your step again. That's how people can be revitalized at any age. Hey, I'm happy to tell people I am a bona fide senior citizen. I'll be 65 years old in September of this year, and I can run up and down football stadium bleachers for an hour, not a medical doctor visit in 28 years, but more importantly, I can help you get your health back and your vibrancy. You can have what I have. You can have your best health at any age, be the strongest at any age through the breakthrough science of intracellular hydration.
Very quickly, also I'm guessing must help people stave off any sort of early onset of Alzheimer's and things like that, where it may actually be coming from the cellular level, yeah?
Well, it's impossible to get Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. When you have cellular hydration, that's what we call type 3 diabetes, and that comes through dehydration of the pancreas. And so you can't have a dehydrated pancreas when you have intracellular hydration. And listen, I encourage people, go look at what tens of thousands of people have done for the last 28 years. You really can change your life. You can be vibrant and energetic at any age.
All right, leave it right there. EnergizedHealth.com. John, Jubilee, good to have you on. We'll see you again soon, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
All right, brother. All right, folks. Tampon Timmy Walz has been more vocal lately, using his very limited knowledge of the world to reestablish his place in Democratic politics. His takes have been horrendous, and he just got reality checked on CNN live by not only the one and only Jake Tapper. Look at the absolute shock and sadness in this pathetic man's voice when he found out that the UAW supports who? Donald Trump's tariffs.
President Trump argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. The UAW called his auto tariffs, quote, a long overdue shift away from a harmful economic framework that has devastated the working class. It signals a return to policies that prioritize the workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations, unquote.
I'm so tired of Tim Walz. Here's how tired I am of Tim Walz. The next soundbite was going to be Tim Walz again. I'm going to ask MD to skip that one. Let's move up to the next one, because I can't stand any more Tim Walz on my screen. I don't know about you. As Donald Trump and the Republicans try to save the nation, the Democrats continue to hold weird events that showcase the exact people that helped destroy our country. Look at this freak show where an illegal queer alien took the stage, whatever that is, and bragged about all of their weirdness.
My name is Grace Martinez Rosas. I am an immigrant. I am undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed.
Well, Gracida Martinez Rosa, I'm going to say adios, because if Tom Homan finds you, you're going to go bye-bye back to wherever you came from. You admitted you're an illegal alien immigrant. Great job. Brilliant. Letitia James, remember her? Only knows one thing: how to hate Donald Trump. That's her entire claim to fame as a corrupt AG from New York, has literally made a name and career for herself by hunting down the president, President Trump. Listen to her latest toxic rant.
That I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me, to be in this position. I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Faith and fear can never share the same space. And so I'm covered by the blood. And I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. You can come after me, but no enemy, nothing formed against me will perish. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me.
Oh, my goodness. She was elected Attorney General because she said she was going to go after Donald Trump. So, of course, she went after Donald Trump once she became the Attorney General of New York, and she lost, and she got her butt handed to her several times, and now she's doubling, tripling down. It's the only thing she's got. She sounded like a preacher. By the way, that was at the National Action Network. You know who runs the National Action Network? That little bobblehead freak, Reverend Al. Reverend Al. Yeah, Reverend Al. I air quote Reverend because that guy's another nut job. Democrats, this is what you want? This is how you're going to come back? By just having more Trump derangement syndrome? It killed you in 2024, but by all means, keep digging that hole. I'm not going to take that trouble from you. Before we head to break, I just wanted to remind you all about my podcast and YouTube page. They're both growing great. They're updated daily, including this show, but also things that are on the show. So you come out, watch the show, tons of other content, anytime, anywhere. Very important, though. Got to subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on anywhere you get your podcasts. We will be back in 2.5 minutes with Kari Lake, folks. First time on the show. Well, look at that. Mountain Hills, Arizona, and what an apropos, as I say, apropos bump-in shot for my next guest, because welcome back, my next guest, but besides being a good friend of mine for a long time, we've done TV together for a very long time. Well, she's the Trump administration's senior advisor for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, Kari Lake, and I'm thrilled to bring Kari Lake on the Bolling Show since we relaunched the Bolling Show. Kari, really good to speak to you again. Feels like it's been a long time.
Congratulations. I'm so excited to be back on with you. And thanks for starting with a little taste of home. And in Fountain Hills, one of the great communities in the Phoenix metro area, and makes me miss all that sunshine being here in Washington, D.C., helping the president out right now.
Well, I'm glad you're helping him, but I feel for you missing, because I moved down to Boca, Florida, and I never want to go back up north again. Kari, so you oversee the senior advisor, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, really important work you guys are doing, and you oversee Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle East, Cuba. Extremely important work you're doing because you're telling the world why freedom matters, why the Constitution here in America, freedom and liberty matters so much. Tell us about the mandate.
Well, I mean, that's why many of these outlets started up back in the day, 84 years ago is when Voice of America started to end the scourge of Nazism around the globe, and then helped us end the Cold War. But along the way, I think they've gone off track. Many could argue they've gone off track. Rather than telling the story of America, you could argue that many times they are telling an anti-American story, or they're telling the story of our adversaries and telling pushing the narrative of our adversaries. And so in many ways, they've gone off the rails, and President Trump recognizes that. These are all taxpayer-funded media outlets, all of them. The hardworking men and women in this country are footing the bill for VOA and Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And the taxpayers are getting really tired of funding media outlets, whether it be NPR, PBS, VOA, you name it. And where the mission is the noble mission where they started has long gone fallen by the wayside, and they're now pushing anti-Americanism. So there's a lot of self-reflecting going on. President Trump has signed an executive order asking me and asking our agency to boil this down to its statutory minimum. That means scaling things back. And of course, we're getting hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. I mean, they've even threatened to lock me up if we don't jump when the judge says to jump. And so this is really out of control. The president runs the executive branch of government. And if he says he wants his executive branch, if he wants this agency scaled back to its statutory minimum, that is what we should be doing. And it shouldn't be a district judge telling the president how to run the country. The president gets to decide how to run the executive branch. So we're dealing with that in my agency. But Eric, I think the American people have had it up to here with funding media outlets that are pushing an anti-American narrative across the globe.
I think it's really important that you point that out. NPR, there was a hearing a couple of weeks ago, and I believe it was MTG, if not, whoever it was talking to the senior most person at NPR, and they asked how many people, is it fair and balanced? Are you representing, since the American people, the taxpayers are supplying all the funding for NPR? Is it bad? It was like 87-0. They leaned left on their editorial producers and editorial folks. It was insane, but we fund that. So do you have access to cutting NPR funding as well with this position?
No, this is an agency that oversees all of our global media. Yeah. So all of the media that in many times originates here, but goes out to the globe. Sometimes it originates in Europe or Asia, and it goes out to the globe. And it used to be that it was at least semi in line with our diplomatic policies and our diplomatic mission. And now you could argue that in many cases they are pushing the narrative of our adversaries. But, speaking of NPR, when you have a liberal, a very far left liberal like Bill Maher calling NPR crazy leftists, you know something's gone wrong. And the American people, we need to cut back on our government. We cannot afford this out of control, bloated government. And we need to find places where we can cut back and give the hardworking taxpayer a break instead of funding things that are not working or have strayed so far away from their mission, their noble mission, that they're no longer effective.
Kari, I'm so fascinated by the Voice of America specifically. You're literally putting out the current president, wherever it is, whether it was Obama when he was running things, or who the hell knows what Biden was doing. He was probably half asleep, didn't even know what Voice of America was. But for Trump, it's talking to the rest of the world about how important America first and MAGA is. So Voice of America, how many people are actually listening? What's your audience? Let's put it that way. And I guess you can incorporate all the rest of them to Radio Free Europe, Asia, et cetera.
Well, I will tell you, the government oftentimes inflates numbers that they want inflated, deflates numbers. You can't always trust the government's numbers. And I don't believe a lot of the numbers that we've seen when it comes to viewership. I don't think the viewership is as great as has been claimed by the government. I just recently saw a video was sent to me. I looked at some of the videos from a Middle East Broadcasting Network, which is another grantee that the American taxpayers are paying for to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars. And they were putting out feeds, and I saw 37 viewers on some of these feeds, 35 viewers. This is not maybe worthwhile for the taxpayer to be paying for. But regardless of what I think about it, the president has asked us through an executive order on March 14th to scale this back to its statutory minimum. So that is what I'm doing. I'm working here to scale this outlet back. Almost all of the staff are on administrative leave right now, and we are scaling this back. Of course, now we've been dragged into court, and they're trying to prevent us from listening to the president. And so we're in a court battle right now, and they're trying to push contempt charges at me because we're working through the court system. But, this is what we're seeing in all aspects of the government right now. Watch what Linda McMahon is trying to do. Is she's trying to scale back the Department of Education as well, as we're trying to scale back agencies that have gotten out of control because the president has asked us to, for the survival of our republic, because we can't afford to be spending money the way we've been spending it. And judges are trying to stop him. And so it's really interesting. I'm kind of dealing with the same thing that a lot of these other agencies are dealing with. And we're just going to keep moving forward and going through these court cases because we have to. But in the end, I do think we will prevail. And I think the Supreme Court will come in and remind these judges that the president is the one in charge of the executive branch of government.
Yeah, I hope so. And I know this is job one across all aspects of government. Trump said we're going to come in and clean house, Doge, et cetera. Great. Love that. And then, Kari, I'm hoping that you're really aggressive with the editorial, the message that we're putting out, that the American people are in favor of Trump, are in favor of MAGA, are in favor of the anti-globalist and more populist movement that's sweeping this country and so many other countries. I think that's so important to get that editorial straight. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to tell you, though, I haven't even started to touch on the editorial part. My job is really to oversee the agency that oversees all of that. And I'm starting to dig in and look at where all of the waste, fraud, and abuse. And when I say abuse, the American taxpayer has been abused by the federal government and many agencies, including the U.S. Agency of Global Media. It is rotten to the core. I just canceled a couple of weeks ago a $250 million 15-year lease that the previous leadership under Biden signed and burdened the American taxpayer with, getting a fancy building that isn't even equipped to cover media with media broadcasting capabilities. It's ridiculous. I canceled that. I've canceled many contracts. We were paying a fortune to Reuters and AP and the agency French Press to tell us what the news is. If you're $1 billion news agency, you shouldn't have to rely on the AP and Reuters to tell you what the news is. So we are being very aggressive in pushing the president's executive order. And, some of these outlets will survive and others may not. But at the end of the day, it has to make sense. It has to be effective. And if it's not, we need to analyze it. And if there's any abuse, waste, and fraud, it needs to be rooted out. We got one chance to do that, and we're doing it right now.
Great. And before we let you go, I know you want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the story of the last 4 or 5 days, the tariffs and their effect. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's going to completely change the way that business is done around the globe. And finally, we're going to have trade deals that are not giving us a stick in the eye. I mean, this has been outrageous over the many past decades. And President Trump said it. The leadership in the White House over the many past decades have not been making good deals. And maybe it was because they weren't skilled deal makers like President Trump. But if you'll notice, last week, on Liberation Day, as he called it, he announced tariffs to all of these countries. And guess what? They're all coming to the bargaining table saying, how can we make this more fair? How can we make this more equitable for the United States of America? They've been getting away with murder when it comes to the trade deals that have been written and pushed on us. And we were told they were good trade deals when in fact they were not. We've watched as manufacturing in this country has been decimated, almost doesn't exist in many cases. And we're going to bring all that back under President Trump's leadership. We're going to be a nation that makes things once again. We're not going to be relying on the teat of all of these other countries. Can you imagine if China and all these other countries where everything is made just overnight turned everything off? We would be in a terrible situation, and it's bad for our national security. President Trump recognizes that, and he's making sure that he makes good on a promise to the American people, which is bringing back the middle class. I'm thrilled he's doing it. I can't wait to see the progress that will be made. I know this will be successful. There'll be a few bumps and bruises along the way, but that short-term pain will be long-term gain for generations to come, including my kids, my grandkids, and yours.
We're going to leave it right there. Kari, really good having you back on the Bolling Show, and looking forward to talking to you again as you progress down that road of, again, scaling back the finances, the spending, and then that editorial. Yep. Really good to have you on, Kari. Kari Lake, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, folks, we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. Hi, folks. Tariff wars, recession fears, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs in volatile markets like right now, I'll say. Don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to the great group Birch Gold. They've helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold? Of course it is. It always is a good time to do that. To learn how to own physical gold in a tax shelter account, text America to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free, no obligation info kit. Again, text America to the number 989898 with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews. You can trust Birch Gold to help protect your savings with gold. It took us decades to get into the tangled mess that they're trying to unpack now. How long will it take to get out of it, and at what cost? Text America to 989898 today. All right, folks, sometimes I wonder what the late, great Rush Limbaugh would say if he saw the state of America, what we're like these days. He passed away in February of 2021, just a few weeks after Joe Biden was sworn in as president, leading to the most pitiful, horrible 4 years of presidency this country has ever lived through, as well as the pinnacle of leftist insanity. Rush Limbaugh was great at highlighting the left's growing madness, unlike anyone else could.
Put the camera back on me. Do this. When you look down, what do you see? You don't see anything because you're not wearing any ribbons. It means you're a bigot. It means you're a racist. It means you're a sexist. It means you're a homophobe. It probably means you're a white guy. It probably means you're a European, and you alone are responsible for all the ills
Rush
of
Limbaugh
America.
knew how to mock the woke mind virus before it was even invented, but I don't think he could ever imagine how far it would get.
What are we protesting today?
Donald Trump.
Well, what's Donald Trump doing that we're protesting?
Well, he is up the American democracy right now and trying to kind of repeal a bunch of Constitution, like, rights and liberties. So,
is there anything in specific that he's?
I don't have all the information, but I do know.
What are you against?
Personally, I'm against tyrants. I'm against tyranny. That's what I'm against.
What is that?
Somebody who's coming in and trying to.
This guy had no idea. When you go out to protest, but you have no idea what you're actually protesting, that's one of the many talented idiots. Let's call him a useful idiot at one of the hands-off protests that took place over the weekend across the country to protest President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Protest what exactly? Well, they don't even freaking know. They're taking away rights, they say. What rights are they taking away, protesters? The rights of the corrupt deep state to keep lining their own pockets with your and my taxpayer money, to fund sex change operations for hyenas in Peru? Tyrants and kings. Oh, you mean the ones who censor free speech online? Those tyrants? The ones who hid stories that hurt their preferred rulers, Hunter Biden laptop, who forced lockdowns and masks on and vaccines on Americans, or else? Those kind of tyrants and kings? These people once rallied against the system. They wanted to burn it all down. They didn't quite know what it meant back then either, but they knew they were against it. Now, they're all about keeping that same system in place, all because it's President Trump who's trying to dismantle it. But the level of leftist insanity we're seeing now, like I said, even the late, great Rush Limbaugh wouldn't believe it. And by the look of it, folks, it's going to be a long 4 years. I imagine a liberal's daily to do this looks something like this. Wake up 9 in the morning, cry some snowflake tears into my mocha chocolate with soy milk and almond milk too. Swastika drawing class at 10 a.m. Memorize Soros-distributed socialist protest propaganda chats for the day at 11 a.m. Around noon, prepare meaningless posters for worthless protests. Protest and burn some stuff down for no reason. Wish for President Trump and Elon Musk to disappear from the face of the earth. Rinse and repeat tomorrow. The communists let their displeasure be known this weekend.
This is what kicking the out of fascism looks like.
Okay, Swalwell, and this is what sleeping with a Chinese spy looks like, Eric. Well, but you already knew that, didn't you? Right, Swalwell? Under the slogan, communism beats fascism, thousands and thousands of Soros-paid protesters took to our streets, our cities, with signs paid for by none other than the Democrat Socialist Party of America. Of course they did, and of course they are. They're paid for and brought to you by Marxists. You see, they don't like it when the government tries to create less government and more money for all of us to keep of our own. So what they're going to do is this. They're going to create their own little government to try and cancel out the real existing Donald Trump government, you know, the one Americans overwhelmingly voted for. Listen.
Americans want us to fight back against Trump's lies and offer a better alternative. Trump has stacked his cabinet with out-of-touch billionaires who are causing chaos and hurting working people. That's why we are launching the People's Cabinet. It will be made up of experts, leaders, and everyday Americans who will share reliable and accurate information that you can use to
Did I
fight
hear
back.
that right? Did I hear that right? The People's Cabinet? Well, it's kind of like the People's Republic of China ring to it, or the People's Republic of Korea ring to it, doesn't it? Well, yeah, except that what the DNC chair right there, that was the DNC chair, what he's suggesting is illegal and unconstitutional, and actually constitutes insurrection. Hey, lefties, in case you didn't know what an insurrection actually is, it's a mutiny, a revolution, insurgents, uprising. You know what that is, right, Ilhan Omar?
We are currently living through a president who wants to be a dictator. In America, we do not accept dictators and we do not accept kings. We have a billionaire who has bought a seat next to the president, using him as a puppet.
Well, that's the congresswoman who represents an entire district in Minnesota that, I don't know, maybe like terrorists, I guess, or terrorist grooming capital of America, we could call it that. She wants Sharia law, by the way, and doesn't want to abide by constitutional law, those folks in her district. Who married her brother, she did, for immigration reasons, absolutely adores those types of folks. But go on, Ilhan Omar, tell us about your version of democracy, because we already know what your constituents prefer.
Do you feel more comfortable living under American law, or do you feel more comfortable living under Sharia law?
Sharia law. I'm a Muslim. I prefer Sharia law. Sharia law, yes.
You prefer Sharia law over American law?
Of course, yeah.
The overwhelming theme at these protests is not just the fact that they're all paid for by the likes of George Soros and others, or that they all support terrorists because they tend to, or they hate the Constitution. We know they do. It's that they're all being delivered the same propaganda lines that they're more than happy to regurgitate.
We're all closer to being on the streets than having a bank account that looks like his. How do you think he got to where he's at? I had people who come up to me and say, Maxwell, why would they be stealing? Elon Musk is already the richest person in the world. He has enough money. The question is, how do you think he became the richest person in the world?
Or moments like this, because Congressman Jamie Raskin just can't help himself and could never, ever miss an opportunity to beg and plead for illegal gang members to be returned to America, come hell or high water.
But Judge Boasberg told him that if you've got the means to unlawfully deport someone, you find the means to bring them back.
So a U.S. congressman says, bring him back. Bring back the thug illegal that came here, gang member, MS-13 gang. Bring him back to the United States. Useful idiots, folks, all of them. Useful freaking idiots. Lenin was right. You need those idiots to divide and conquer any society. Democrats, useful idiots. We'll be back in 2.5. St. Martin. Never been there. Oh, maybe I have been there. I'm not sure. I don't know. Pretty beach. Of course, the most beautiful beaches are right here in South Florida. I'm a big advocate for Florida and South Florida. All right, let's bring in our good friend Steve Bannon, who's having a very good hair day today, I've noticed, and he says it's because he's out west. I asked him if he had a blowout at the dry bar or something. He said, no, I'm out west. But I did tell him a story that a young lady came up to me over the weekend in Universal with my wife and my family, my nieces from Chicago. She comes up, she watches the show, and she said, I love those things you do with Bannon at the end. By the way, is he single? Because I'd like to maybe meet him. So I said, I'll ask him on Monday. So I just thought I'd pass that along to you. Mr. Bannon?
Thank you. I live a monkish, as people know, I live a monkish existence in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, but I appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, you're very, very busy.
Appreciate the fan.
Very busy man. Can we do this very quickly? So this market is so jittery about these tariffs. We had the big downdraft Thursday and Friday last week. This week we opened up Monday 1,500 points lower again. Massive melting down. And then there was a rumor. Mad Dog, just roll this. Don't play the soundbite. Just roll it as VO, as we call it. Let Steve take a look at this. And Steve, if you see that chart, these charts that keep rolling, this is around, I'm going to say around late morning, near midday. Market was down 900, 1,200 points, bouncing around. A rumor came out that Trump was going to pause for 60 days, possibly. CNBC reported it. Reuters reported it. The market turned around 2,000 points from the low back up within a minute or two. It was confirmed it was just a rumor. 2,000 point drop again. I mean, what a jittery market, Steve.
Well, I think they're looking for a process. If the tweet you're talking about is Kevin Hassett, the head of the National Economic Council, a very powerful position, said there's going to be a 90-day pause. Obviously not a 90-day pause, but what we saw throughout the day is the beginning of a process. I think Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, put out a couple of tweets later, Eric, about the Japanese coming in for a systematic and really work through with I think probably our most significant trading partner, ex-China. And then the president tripled down on China. I think their tariffs now are over 100% because of what they try to do as retaliation. This is quite obvious, a trade war, I think, very much focus of the Chinese Communist Party. And the rest of the world, I think, is going to work to come through and make deals with the president. I think this is one of the reasons Black Monday was canceled. At the end of the day, it's pretty normal day on Wall Street.
Well, I'll beg to differ with normal because 1,500 lower, a couple of hundred high. I think it was canceled because Jim Cramer called for a Black Monday sell-off. That, again, like I told you, there's an index that takes whatever Cramer says and it does the opposite, and it's actually beating the S&P, which is incredible. I'm not
inverse Cramer.
Inverse Cramer. Yeah, it's a well-known index, and I'm a big fan of that. He was asked about the first question with Netanyahu in the Oval today was, "Are you thinking about pausing?" He said, "No, we're not talking about that." And I will give you credit, Steve, that I want this to work. I want this. I don't know how in God's name it's going to, but I want it to because I've been doing this a long time. And the market, I watched while he said we're not going to pause, and I'm watching it trading because it was still open at the time. And it really, it dipped a little bit, but it didn't take a beating that I thought it would have had he said that.
Yeah.
So maybe we are running out of steam to the downside, so to speak.
Well, I think people are seeing a process. Japan's going to come in. We know there's 50 major countries that are stacked up like flights at LaGuardia on a Friday night. People want to come in. President Trump's restructuring the geoeconomic order, geoeconomic and geostrategic order. Pete Hegseth down in Panama today. So a lot of stuff going on. Big ruling out of the Supreme Court this afternoon. So I think a lot of things are positive for President Trump. He's shown a process on this trade restructuring, and I think the focus is on the Chinese Communist Party that he's going to hammer. So this is why I think it's people see a process, and I think the panic's gone. Black Monday was canceled as much as Jim Cramer wanted it, and Katie Tur wanted it. I think it was canceled, and it's now time, I think, to get back to work.
Let's do it. Steve. We hand it off to you, and we will see you again tomorrow, my friend. Have a great show.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you. Love the handover. Okay, we got a really great this morning. I really want to thank my team. The cold open was fantastic. Did another great job this afternoon. This would kind of summarize everything. Let's go ahead and get it rolling. I'll come back at the end of it.
Stocks closing mostly lower as a wild session comes to a close. Looks like we got gains on the NASDAQ here, but the S&P 500 touching bear market levels early in the session. The Dow swinging more than 2,500 points in trading today, and the NASDAQ trading in a nearly 10% range. It was, to say the least, volatile.
Just saw this tweet from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who posted that he is engaging in negotiations at President Trump's direction with the government of Japan. That's an interesting one, Scott, because that does seem to indicate that there are negotiations going on behind the scenes, or at least they're starting today. And one of the big questions for the market in all of this was whether or not this is a negotiating strategy or whether this is a permanent tariff strategy. We had Peter Navarro on CNBC earlier today saying this is not a negotiation, and that even if a country like Vietnam came and offered 0% tariffs, he said that wouldn't be good enough. We have to go below zero by getting rid of all the non-tariff barriers. Here you see Scott Bessent saying, well, it is a negotiation. So make of that what you will, but it seems to be at least a little bit of a positive for those who don't like these high tariff rates, Scott.
There's really no sign of the market finding stability. Just listen to the way that these CEOs are viewing it. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, says we are likely to see inflationary outcomes. Whether or not the menu of tariffs causes a recession remains in question, but it will slow down growth. Bill Ackman of the hedge fund Pershing Square says the president is losing the confidence of business leaders around the globe. This is not what we voted for, he says. We are heading for a self-induced economic nuclear winter, and we should start hunkering down. Richard Branson of Virgin says this is the moment to own up to a colossal mistake and change course. Otherwise, America will face ruin for years to come. Jay Hatfield of Infrastructure Capital Advisors. This is unambiguously stupid. And Isaac Larian of MGA Entertainment. This thing is going to backfire. And yet, Donald Trump is still shrugging it all off, not bothered by what is dangerously close to becoming the worst three-day sell-off in 38 years. We'll see how things end. Bigger than COVID or the 2008 financial crisis. As Politico put it this morning, your playbook author has only ever seen one example up close of a leader taking bold and purposeful economic action, which instantly crashed the national economy. And she was outlasted by a head of lettuce.
It would be nice to serve a nice, easy term, but we have an opportunity to change the fabric of our country. We have an opportunity to reset the table on trade. We lose billions of dollars. We lose close to $2 trillion a year on trade. We lose $1 trillion a year to China. $1 trillion. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year on trade to China. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars overall, probably close to $2 trillion. Why would we do that? Number one, why would we do that? And then you have to say, is it sustainable? Then you hear about all of the people that say, well, deficits. If we have a deficit with the country, or if the country has a big surplus with us, like China has a massive surplus that they take and they spend on their military. Well, we don't want that. I don't want them to take $500, $600 billion a year and spend it on their military. I don't want them spending money on their military. And I shouldn't have to spend money. We shouldn't have to spend it either. Because, hopefully, and I said this to President Xi, hopefully it's money that we're never going to use. In other words, because we're not going to use those incredible weapons that we have and that they have. We don't want that. So it's going to be very interesting. It's the only chance our country will have to reset the table. Because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end. But we are making tremendous progress with a lot of countries, and the countries that really took advantage of us are now saying, please negotiate. You know why? Because they're getting beaten badly because of what's happening. They're getting beaten badly. They're being devalued as countries. But it's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade. And when we do, we're going to come out unbelievably well. We're going to have a strong country economically again. And we're going to have those factories that are empty all over the United States We've lost 90,000 plants and factories. Think of this, 90,000, you wouldn't think it's possible, 90,000 plants and factories since NAFTA, which was, by the way, the worst trade deal ever developed, ever had by any country anywhere, NAFTA.
Well, in the past, he did care about stock market returns, right? He thought it was the best single indicator of a president's success the last time he was in power when stock markets were going up. This time around, yes, he and Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, had been bragging about how interest rates were falling. Interest rates were probably falling because investors were dumping stocks and plowing that money into bonds, which mechanically reduces interest rates. But actually, today, rates have gone back up, which almost never happens when you see a stock market rout like this. And there is some debate about why that might be going on. It might be because people are just like desperate to hoard cash, so they're selling everything they can. It might be that investors are trying to pull their money specifically out of the United States. And it might, in fact, be that there are expectations of higher inflation. When there is higher inflation, in this case, presumably due to Trump's tariffs, that would nudge the Federal Reserve to raise rates, right, which is exactly what Trump does not want. So I think that's one very likely course of action here that's driving these weird things that we're seeing in the stock market that, again, or excuse me, in the bond market that, again, Trump had been bragging about, now has been silent on, that they're going the other way. But no matter what, the Federal Reserve is not going to bow to Donald Trump. It must not bow to Donald Trump. It is politically independent. Its actual independence and its perceived independence are crucial to its ability to keep inflation under control. Like, there is a reason why countries that have more independent central banks tend to have better inflation outcomes, and it's because if you put the money supply in the hands of politicians, people don't believe that that money supply will be stable. It's what happens in Argentina. It's what happens in Ethiopia. It's what happened in Turkey.
I mean, we're cutting prices because prices got so high people couldn't live. I mean, the prices for groceries, the prices for standard groceries, standard things were going through the roof. They couldn't live. And now those prices are coming down. So call them groceries, but that's down, energy's down, and interest rates are down. Everything's down. And the interest rates, the beauty there is when we refinance debt, you know, debt's become such a big factor in this country. We're going to start paying debt off with tariffs and other things. But it's such a big factor because the interest rate's so high. Well, now that's coming way down. So our budget's going to look a lot better because interest costs are way down. And I guess I've done that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about Iran because this is the first time we hear that the U.S. is having a direct contact with the Iranians. Is it possible to give us some more information at what level the U.S. is represented?
High level, very high level. And we're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It would be really great for Iran, I can tell you that. But hopefully, we're not going to have to get into that. We are meeting very importantly on Saturday at almost the highest level, and we'll see how it works out. Please.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish, in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Monday, 7 April in the year of our Lord 2025. Black Monday was canceled. As much as Jim Cramer and the CNBC crowd and the MSNBC crowd And particularly, Katie Turner, all these people don't know anything about the stock market, never cared about it, but now it's like the most important thing in the universe. The folks that financed the globalists, the folks that financed all the factories leaving, the folks that essentially bet against the American people, the folks that went long other countries and shorted America, they're getting crushed. Americans are doing just fine in a historic day. A couple things. President Trump right there just dropped a blockbuster. Oh, by the way, we're in direct negotiations with the Iranians, or direct talks. If Denver has a Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, and as you know, contributor at the War Room for a couple of years. Scott, this is what got things sorted during the day. Talk about process. And remember, these the reciprocity of the tariffs kick in on Wednesday, 1 week after they were announced on the 9th of April. And President Trump says, hey, it's no negotiation. This is what it's going to be. The formula, and this is why people are confused, it's not just the tariff rate. It's all the gaming of the system, the currency manipulation, the counterfeiting, the trying to get around the rules. Also, all the barriers. They put up tons of barriers. Not what they call non-tariff or non-cash barriers. As Peter Navarro said, for Vietnam, hey, bro, even if you went to zero, it's not even close to being good enough. And this has come as a wake-up call, but they're still stacked up. So President Trump's prepared to listen, right? These are going to be trading partners. He's prepared to listen. But this is a total restructuring of the geoeconomic order throughout the world. And let me just read these two tweets that came out earlier and followed by a third about the Chinese Communist Party. This is Scott Bessent early in the afternoon. Following a very constructive phone discussion with the government of Japan, POTUS, real Donald Trump, has tasked me and the U.S. trade rep to open negotiations to implement the president's vision for the new golden age of global trade. And then he is going to do it with the prime minister and his cabinet. So this is direct high-level negotiations. Then Scott Bessent followed that up by saying, Japan remains among America's closest allies, and I look forward to our upcoming productive engagement regarding tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency issues, and government subsidies. I appreciate the Japanese government's outreach and measured approach to this process. Another big thing, this is like the Chinese Communist Party, state-owned industries and what they do to game the system with state-owned industries against companies here in the United States that have to compete. All we're looking for is a level playing field. This was followed very closely by China, and this is from the Secretary of Treasury, now in charge of this process. China has chosen to isolate itself by retaliating and doubling down on previous negative behavior. Over 50 countries have responded both openly and positively to the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Historic action to create a fairer, more prosperous system of global trade. And he looks forward to China getting the message. I think President Trump took tariffs today over 100% against the Chinese Communist Party. It's the folks, the people that are whining are the people that finance the Chinese Communist Party. They've been outed, they've been unmasked, and quite frankly, they've been isolated with the Chinese Communist Party. Hey, if you got a problem with your stocks going down, don't finance the bad guys. And whatever you do, do not short the American worker, the United States of America, and particularly never doubt Donald John Trump. He's coming to this one full on, a total throwdown. And right now, as we end trading on a Monday, it was supposed to be Black Monday. Unfortunately, for the bad guys, that was canceled. Katie Tur, I know you're going to cry great salt tears tonight over all those stocks that didn't drop to the floor. This is completely manufactured as they're trying to use this as another weapon to drive President Trump from office and destroy MAGA. Guess what? 5 days into it, it's the tech bros in the Chinese Communist Party and the sociopathic overlords on Wall Street taking it on the chops. Short break. Back in a moment.
American faith in America's heart.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
You know, earlier, I don't know if we have time to play it, but Vandalion said they're prepared to go zero tariffs, but that didn't even start to talk about the state-owned industries, what they've got in currency, I mean, all of it. But she made a threat there. If it doesn't happen, you know, if they're prepared to stand up and take countermeasures. Hey, lady, you take one countermeasure, all the underwriting we do for your defense is gone. Europe can't defend itself. Europe spends no money on defense. Think about this for a second. They have all these trade barriers. They rip you off constantly. There's no American cars in Germany. They ship the German cars over here right from Germany. Nothing's really made here, manufactured here. Even the assembled parts, even the assembly we do for Fords and others, the high value added parts are made over other places. She has the gall to sit there. Hey, if you don't do this, we're going to retaliate. Retaliate one iota, and we ought to pull all money out of NATO, number one. We ought to move the 2 carrier battle groups there in the Red Sea, taking incoming from the Houthis to keep the Suez Canal open so that you get trade, right? Because as JD said in that text stream, well, only 3% of going through there has anything to do with the United States of America. We're keeping the Suez Canal open. Why? Because you guys are too broke and never put any money into the Royal Navy, to the French Navy, to the Italian Navy, right? You've underinvested there for decades and decades and decades, and that's because the globalists on the Atlantic Council and Stavridis and all these people on Morning Joe, Richard Haas, you had to be great partners in NATO. Why the European nations' elites spit in our face and stole from our workers. And President Trump has stood up to that. It's not going to happen anymore. He's thrown down hard, and she has the gall to retaliate. Then fine, not just cut off NATO. If we pulled out all the infrastructure of our military throughout Europe, the communications, the logistics, NATO wouldn't exist. These people have put no money into their military. And if you look at the polling, their young people won't volunteer for their military. Their young people won't fight for their own countries. You have some very brave people, like in the British Army, the Royal Navy, and the French. You have some, obviously, young patriots in those countries that volunteer. But overall, you do the polling, they won't fight for their country. They won't volunteer, generally, overall. And in the United States, our infrastructure throughout Europe is what even allows any type of military response. So, lady, you want to talk tough. People are to say, hey, we've had enough of it. We had a belly full of this. We're underwriting a bunch of elites that are skiing in Switzerland or hanging out in the south of France, and we don't want to do it anymore. The American taxpayer doesn't want to do it. We told you it was going to be turbulent. This started off a little dicey last night, at about 6 o'clock when the futures market opened. But it went all over the map today and kind of landed in not too bad a place. We're a long way from being out of this. President Trump says, hey, this is just the top of the first inning. You got to get ready, because he is reordering global trade to focus on either, one, bringing manufacturing back to the United States so the American workers have high value-added jobs, right? So the most premier manufacturing in the world, and the American citizen can then get a great pricing off that. Or if you're not going to do that, you're going to pay up to get into this premium market. You're not giving it away anymore. And we should not be even considering giving up the military. I would actually charge the Europeans, if you want 2 carrier battle groups in the Red Sea and you want carrier strike forces hitting the Houthis to keep the Suez Canal open, start sending checks, folks. Underwrite it. We're not doing it for free anymore. That's because we have $1 trillion defense bill. The whole fiasco on the one big beautiful bill, we haven't even had time to get into it the last couple of days. It's a fiasco. There's enough no votes in the House right now that says it can't pass. And why? These are the deficit hawks saying, are you kidding me? We're actually increasing spending. Forget the happy talk over 10 years. That's all happy talk. In this fiscal year, we're using Biden's budget at 25. There's been no impoundments, no rescissions, and we keep asking Russ and the guys, like, where are they? Doge, where is the fraud? Don't put up something on a website. I want to see cash money, and I want to see people that start getting indicted. If it's fraud, and on the programmatic side, where are the cuts? Where are the cuts? You're not seeing it. And I'm telling you, these two budgets, they've got debt ceiling increases of $4 trillion on one hand and $5 trillion on the other. And I think it's a 2-year deal. I don't think it's a 4-year deal. I think that's in 2 years. I don't know because I don't know all the details. But I also know they're going to run massive deficits. And so that just can't go on. We have to have an adults conversation. No more over in the Senate, they're doing gimmicks. They're doing games. The American people don't want to see it, and particularly MAGA. We want to face up that, hey, if things have to be cut, they have to be cut. If taxes on the wealthy have to be increased, then taxes on the wealthy have to be increased. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. But that's the financial situation we're in because working people deserve an additional tax cut. Besides the extension of the tax cut, they deserve to have, as President Trump promised on the campaign, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and particularly, folks, no tax on Social Security. You worked hard enough and you contributed so many years, you don't need to be taxed on that on the way up. Two things they're going to do. Mike Davis is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Rosemary Gibson, huge decision in the Supreme Court today. But they're working on coming into these courts with these radical judges, I'm not kidding, to stop Trump on his trade, to say it's unconstitutional. That's going to happen. We're going to talk to Mike about that because we're going to need you at the ramparts because now we've got to be bringing these judges in and grilling them in public to get people's minds right. Okay, we need a struggle session with Beryl Howe. We need a struggle session with Boasberg. Those two to start off with. And I think the message will then get out. And you will have rulings that understand that President Trump's commander-in-chief of the United States. Big ruling at the Supreme Court today on that very, very, very topic, which the MSNBC and the New York Times have been skipping around all day long about. There was an order at midnight that had to be fulfilled to bring this individual back. Not so fast. Mike Davis will be here to explain that. Rosemary Gibson is going to talk about supply chain. Also, an investigative report she's been doing is going to blow your head up, as only Rosemary Gibson can do. Birchgold.com. I told you it's going to be turbulent. Folks, you like the turbulence? Well, it ain't going to stop. Go to birchgold.com right now. Easy way to do it is take out your phone, text Bannon, Bannon, at 98989. You get the ultimate guide to investing in gold and precious metals in the era of Trump. Do it today. It's accessible. It starts getting you into the process. Then you talk to Philip Patrick and the team. Or get the End of the Dollar Empire. It's a little more in-depth. Talks about our overall financial problem, how we got to $37 trillion, how in the hell are we going to get out of here, and some of the theories that the sociopathic overlords on Wall Street used to get us into this mess. You want to see that. Go to birchgold.com/Bannon and do that today. Also, we're going to need you at the ramparts. Mike Davis is going to talk about Article 3. Also going over at Bill Blaster, we're going to need people on the ramparts blowing up the phones in the House, particularly on these judges over the next couple of days, because we got to get some minds right. The Judiciary Committee is not going to move on their own volition. They're going to send a strongly worded letter. Home Title Lock's got the $1 million restoration project. You get 24-hour coverage. In the middle of the night, if anything's happening, you get an alert. So 24-hour day alert. Also, $1 million restoration package if all else fails. Go talk to Natalie Dominguez and the team at HomeTitleLock.com. Steve25 is the promo code. You find out all about it. Don't let the only thing you've got to show that you own that real asset that has about 90% of your net worth in it is a thing called the title. Don't let anybody else get their hands on it. Go check it out today. The nightmare stories Natalie comes on here with will scare the devil out of you. Okay, intense day on Wall Street. Here's what's happening. President Trump is going through both a geopolitical realignment. Think about it. At CPAC back in 17, I said, hey, American first national security policy, economic nationalism, and then deconstruction of the administrative state. Those are the three big verticals. He's doing it nonstop. A couple of the numbers, some of the engine room folks said repeat them. Okay, you got $37 trillion in debt. Right now, we're going at about $1.4 trillion, I think, gross amount of interest every year. Think about that for a second. $1.4 trillion just to go to pay the interest on this debt. Well, it's the flip side of the trade deficit. Trade deficit now is $25 trillion, I think, in aggregate. That means we've spent more assets or monetized more assets to buy stuff coming into this country. We have a deficit. That's why President Trump was talking over $1 trillion with China. I think this is a gross amount. The net, I think, with China is about $600 billion last year. The trade deficit, by the way, the last couple of months has been at record rates. Why? Because we don't make anything here. We're treated as an economic colony. We send essentially raw materials and some services to China, and they send us back finished goods, many of which come from state-owned industries. They kind of gamed the entire system. That and the transfer and stealing of intellectual property. So we have $25 trillion in trade deficit, $18 trillion just since China came into the World Trade Organization and got most favored nation status. I think it's $600 billion a year for stealing of intellectual property from our universities, from our companies, from the government, by the Chinese Communist Party. I think that adds up to another $25 or $30 trillion of stolen intellectual property that you paid for, either supporting the state colleges or your taxes going to Ivy League schools, the research, or your equity investments in these companies. The intellectual property was stolen by the Chinese Communist Party. Fully understood by Wall Street. That was one of the reasons they said, hey, you do these joint ventures, you can take the intellectual property. We get that too. The folks on Wall Street knew this, why they were underwriting it. In fact, they encouraged it. They thought it was a good thing. You know why? Put money in their pocket. Now it ain't putting money in their pocket, and they're quite upset. The last number is the contingent liabilities on the U.S. dollar. Over $100 trillion. I don't want to get into that because then you won't be sleeping at all. A Monday that didn't turn out to be Black Monday. Jimmy Cramer wanted it. Katie Tur wanted it. All the jackals over at MSNBC wanted it. It didn't happen because President Trump once again stepped into the breach, and his Secretary of the Treasury stepped up and started getting an orderly process of how we're going to work through this. Short commercial break. Mike Davis, Rosemary Gibson, next, only in the War Room.
Chief Justice John Roberts is temporarily blocking a district court order requiring that a Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador be returned to the U.S. by midnight. So this gives the court more time to consider the issue after the Trump administration requested they intervene. So the legal team for Kilmar Obrego Garcia now has until tomorrow night at 5 to respond. CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland has been following this case closely. Scott, thanks for joining us. What can we expect in this case?
The Supreme Court's going to hit the snooze button proverbially on this case. Doesn't really change the fundamental dynamics here. They now have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to make their arguments over the matter, but the matter stays the same. A court in Maryland, a federal judge, has ordered the return of Mr. Obrego Garcia by the end of the night tonight. Well, that's now pushed at least through 5 p.m. tomorrow. The Department of Justice has acknowledged it was a mistaken deportation that shouldn't have taken place, but they've made the argument they can't get him from El Salvador because it's now in El Salvador's jurisdiction. The U.S. Supreme Court may hash out some of what comes to them in this. They may kick this back to the federal judge in Greenbelt, Maryland, but for now, the deadlines have been delayed. They have not been canceled.
Okay. Article 3's Mike Davis joins us. Mike, all day long up until this happened, MSNBC, this was like the B block. They were saying he's coming back at midnight or Trump officials are going to be held in contempt. They haven't decided whether it's civil or criminal contempt. They were lathered up on this one, bro. What happened? Because you haven't heard a peep on it in MSNBC since this ruling came down by the Supreme Court. Why is this a big deal?
Well, I think the Chief Justice finally understands that these activist judges don't have Green Beret law clerks. And so how the hell do these judges think that you're going to order the president of the United States to negotiate with a foreign leader? A judge does not have that authority to order the president to negotiate with a foreign leader, especially on a compressed timeline like this, and get a result from that foreign leader to bring back an illegal immigrant into our country. This guy was from El Salvador. He was here illegally. He convinced an immigration judge that he was going to be persecuted in El Salvador. Okay, well, you know what? Send him to another country. He shouldn't be in the United States if he's here illegally. And for this judge to think that she can order the president to negotiate with a foreign leader is just crazy. And fortunately, the Chief Justice is starting to wake up. He's starting to get his judicial house in order.
Now, you say this, he ruled against us the other day. Why do you think this shows you that he's now focused on what he said about this is important enough that this could, because aren't they on the hook to actually give briefings tomorrow on this contempt? We have a whole nother thing going. Bosberg's got a contempt hearing going about, Bosberg trying to step in and be commander in chief.
Yeah, I don't know how Bosberg can think that his case is going to survive after the Chief Justice just did this administrative stay in a case that the facts and the law are a lot worse for the Trump administration on this one than the Tren de Aragua that Bosberg tried to stop. So I hope that the Supreme Court is coming to its senses. I hope the Supreme Court is stopping these judicial saboteurs. I hope the Supreme Court understands that if Bosberg is able to hold Trump administration officials in contempt for not turning around planes full of terrorists and bringing them back to the United States after this Boasberg the clown dangerously exposed this ongoing military operations 4 Saturdays ago, when he wasn't even the emergency judge that weekend. He took this upon himself to open up his courtroom, expose this ongoing military operation where the president is working with the Salvadorian president with a very sensitive military operation to get over 200 of the Western Hemisphere's worst terrorists the hell out of America. And Boasberg thinks he can expose that. Boasberg thinks he can order planes to turn around. Boasberg did not know the fuel levels. Boasberg did not know the security footprint in America. We saw the security footprint in El Salvador. Why the hell would we have had that same security footprint in America? Because who would have imagined that some whack job DC activist judge thinks he can order planes to turn around? So I hope that this is the chief finally getting his judicial house in order, because if Boasberg holds Trump administration officials in contempt, good luck, Jeb Boasberg, enforcing your contempt order, because I don't see it happening.
Okay. All day long this morning, there's been a huge buzz because Jonathan Karl broke it this morning on Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America that prominent conservative people in the judicial side of the conservative movement came to Jonathan Karl and said they are preparing lawsuits right now to go into court and to shut down President Trump's reordering of the global trade arrangements between countries. Your thoughts on this? This is, once again, every action that President Trump is trying to take as chief executive officer of the U.S. government or commander-in-chief for national security purposes is being thwarted by these courts. What do you think about this one? Because I hear they may be as close as tomorrow to be ready to file.
I think that these activist judges and these activist plaintiffs are election deniers, because President Trump campaigned on the fact that he's going to hire Elon Musk. He's going to set up the Department of Government Efficiency. He's going to secure our border. He's going to deport illegal immigrants, particularly foreign terrorists. He's going to impose tariffs on foreign countries to rebalance our trade that's been so out of whack for decades. And President Trump's doing exactly what he promised American voters he would do. And he got a broad electoral mandate to do it, 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, the popular votes. He has the legal authority to do this, both under Article 2 of the Constitution and his statutory authority. And I would say this: if you don't want the president to have so much power, maybe you should not give the executive branch so much power. Maybe you should follow the Constitution and have the executive branch with its specific enumerated and divided powers. And what's not specifically spelled out in the Constitution belongs to the states and to the people. But this idea that you're going to delegate to the executive branch all of this power, but the president doesn't get to oversee that executive branch, that we have unelected bureaucrats who are supposed to run the executive branch despite what the president wants, that's the very definition of a deep state.
Mike, I've talked to a number of congressmen that are sitting there going, they think it's time for hearings, particularly with Burrow Howe and Boasberg, on these very topics. They're not saying start impeachments. They're saying, but they ought to come in at least for kind of public, I guess, depositions, or at least hearings by judiciary. I don't know if there's any momentum over there or movement over there. We've told the audience, hey, make sure you're doing your home title lock because we've got to have you on the ramparts. What is Article 3 calling for right now? Because I know the audience wants it. I know the MAGA base wants it. I know there's many, many congressmen that think it should happen. I certainly know that people in the Trump administration want it and want it to happen right away. Where do we stand with all this? You're kind of the go-to guy on this. Where do we stand?
I'm working very closely with Senator John Thune's office, the Senate Majority Leader, along with Senator Chuck Grassley's office, the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Senator Mike Lee, along with members of the House. We are working on legislation right now, various pieces of legislation to hold these activist judges accountable for their unlawful temporary restraining orders that aren't temporary. At least the Supreme Court finally fixed that problem yesterday, Friday, where Justice Amy Coney Barrett switched sides from her position she took several weeks ago that unleashed this judicial sabotage. I said before that she's a rattled law professor with her head up her ass. Well, at least on Friday, she got her head out of her ass, and she finally understands that just because these judges call it a temporary restraining order, that doesn't mean it's temporary. When you're sending $2 billion out the door, that's not temporary. It's not coming back. And so it sounds like she's back in line. What I've been calling on the War Room posse to do is to go to article3project.org. And I've never called on this before, but what Jeb Boasberg, this activist Obama judge in D.C. is doing is so unlawful and so dangerous for him to expose and sabotage an ongoing military operation. I've never called this for this to happen before. I think the Trump administration had a constitutional duty to ignore those orders to turn around the planes. And I also think the House of Representatives must open an impeachment inquiry on Boasberg, because if he's sitting through an impeachment inquiry, he's not going to have time to moonlight as the next commander in chief, whatever Saturday he decides to go open his courtroom and expose an ongoing military operation.
And as you called from day one, the reason this is important, people need to go to Article 3 today. And you've got a script there, too, about the impeachment. You know, even go by the hearing, or even more important than legislation right now, is that he's going down the path of contempt. He intends to basically chop block the Trump administration. It's what they want to do at midnight tonight. If Roberts hadn't stepped in, if they didn't comply by midnight, this is all they were taught. They were lathered up all day. Oh, it's going to be contempt. The question now is it going to be civil or is it going to be criminal? They're trying to go down. It shouldn't be lost that this is the reason I went to prison, was contempt. This is the weapon they try to use, correct? And Boasberg's very specifically trying to use it with Trump on the commander-in-chief issue. This is why we have to take action now, correct?
Yeah, Judge Boasberg is acting lawlessly and dangerously. He has no need to know anything about these flights. He has no jurisdiction. This is, at best, a habeas case where those prisoners can file a habeas petition in Texas from where those planes took off. Jeb Boasberg does not have the jurisdiction, does not have the power to be in this case at all. He definitely does not have the power to order the president to turn around planes during an ongoing military operation. Think about how dangerous that is. Think about how dangerous this precedent is, where a judge can expose and sabotage an ongoing military operation, tell the president to turn around planes with 200 plus of the worst terrorists in the Western Hemisphere, and then the president lands the planes, thank God, and this judge thinks he's going to hold people in contempt. He's trying to figure out how his order was ignored. Hey, Jeb, you know why your order was ignored? Because it was completely lawless and really dangerous, right? Did you know the fuel levels of these planes? Did you know if there was a security footprint back in America to take 200 of the worst terrorists? Did you want to undermine the president's ability to conduct foreign affairs? If you're going to embarrass a foreign leader after he has several hundreds of his law enforcement, military, and intel officials waiting for these terrorists and this high stakes operation, and you're going to embarrass that foreign leader so they don't want to do business with the president going forward? Hey, Jeb, go to hell, buddy.
Big victory on Friday, another big victory today, but we need to get this done on Boasberg. Where do people go, Mike, on Article 3? Where do they go? What do they do? Article3project.org,
article number 3project.org. Donate, but only as much as you can afford. Follow us on social media. And the action item right now is let's impeach Jeb Boasberg's ass. Let's haul him in. Let's make the process the punishment. If he thinks he's going to take off his judicial robe and climb into the political arena and throw political punches, the Article 3 Project is very happy to throw political counterpunches.
Mike Davis, also your Twitter feed. It gets a little hot late at night. Where do people go?
MRDDMIA, my initials in Des Moines, Iowa. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mike Davis, and thank you for leading the fight. Remember, the courts is where they think they've got the advantage right now, including on this trade situation. And these are conservative groups. What we hear from Jonathan Karl at ABC News is that some big conservative groups are going to take President Trump to court to try to thwart his efforts to reorganize the world's trading system so that American workers benefit in the United States of America. Short commercial break. Back in the War Room in just a moment.
Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
One of the best people we ever had come on the show now joins me, Rosemary Gibson. Rosemary, you put a book out in, and for those of you that have come to the show in the last couple of years, back in the early days of the pandemic, Rosemary Gibson shocked America by coming on War and Pandemic at the time and saying, hey, got a heads up for you folks. Most of the supply chains on so many important areas are really controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and they've done this not to make money, but also strategically. One of them is in generic drugs and active pharmaceutical ingredients. She published a book that was suppressed by Big Pharma. It came out in 2018, I think, called China RX. That was one of the most, it was an Turbo type expose or Sinclair Lewis from back in the 1920s and 30s. This was a blockbuster that shocked people about how China had done this and making money off it, but also using it strategically. It's the reason we talk about the Jace Medical guys. They eventually built a business around it. Now this fight about supply chains, because this is one of the things we're talking about. The company guys come and talk to the press and say, hey, look, we're going to build the factories, we're going to put money in, but we also have to bring the whole ecosystem back with us, including the supply chains. This is going to take a while because the CCP has done this strategically. First off, where do we stand with the generics? Because you've been working in with President Trump and others to try to solve this problem, which appears to be unsolvable. But also, you have another massive expose, ma'am, in your investigations into this area. You've got another blockbuster for us. So the floor is yours, Rosemary Gibson. Welcome back into the War Room.
Steve, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for airing this issue. Yeah, China RX exposed how dependent we are as a country. So on most of the medicines that Americans take, Steve, each one depends on China for at least one component. And China knows exactly what our pain points are. So I can imagine we might see some disruption in our medicine supply chain in terms of the starting materials. It's just like the rare earths. China controls the upstream. It has a control on the global supply. So we could expect to see some real challenges with that. But I think the real news here, what's new today, Steve, is that it's not just that we've lost jobs and lost our industrial base. We've had our trading partners dump substandard drugs into the United States. These are not the illegal ones. These are the ones in the legal supply chain. And this has been known for a while. And the good news is we had some tremendous leadership from the Department of Defense. And they started a generic drug testing program in November 2023. They realized the importance of this. They have to protect their warfighters, their family members, and retirees and veterans. And so some of the results are just beginning to come out, Steve, and they're blockbuster. They're finding after just testing the first few drugs, and some of these are in the top 10 of what Americans take, that 13% of them have manufacturing defects. They have carcinogens in them, lead, arsenic, and some of them don't work as they should because they're not manufactured properly. If you ask any manufacturer with a product with 13% manufacturing defects, that is off the charts. People bet their lives on these things. And some of these products are really lifesavers. And I stay tuned because there could be some things coming down the pike showing that Americans are not doing too well on some of these. So we have to fix it and fix it fast. And the other key thing is that the Department of Defense stocks the White House pharmacy. And I'm sure it must stock the crash carts. And so first priority 101 is to expand this testing. And by the way, we have to brief the new senior leadership in DOD, because this was started under the prior leadership, and I give them a lot of credit for this. We have to brief the new leadership team in DOD, and they have to expand this testing. And these test results, they can be used by hospitals all over the U.S. because they're all the same. What's used in the White House and elsewhere, basic drugs, and hospitals around the country. We have to start testing.
Hang on. Rosemary, hang on. Before my head blows up, I'm a simple man. Let's go back to the beginning. Yes. These generic drugs, well, hang on. I know China's got a reputation of making some shoddy product, but I thought that since they do the generics and put in, they make the ingredients for other drugs, once to get into the United States, don't you have to go through some sort of, I don't know if it's FDA or who does it, but is somebody besides Customs and Border? Don't these have to be inspected to make sure that they're the quality they say so on the package, and so you don't get arsenic or lead or whatever else you said was in there? Isn't there already a testing apparatus that just says, okay, this batch is not good and it's got to go back, and we find the company or we tell the company you no longer can make drugs and products that come into the United States, ma'am?
Steve, we have de facto 2 regulatory systems. We have one for U.S. firms and European firms that are professional, trustworthy companies in trustworthy countries. And then we have, in the case of China, and by the way, these manufacturing defects are in products coming from multiple countries. It could be India. There was just an issue with South Africa where they didn't have sterile facilities. They had an outside door left open, letting all sorts of air come in what's supposed to be a sterile facility. We have billions and billions of pills coming in every day, Steve, and it's an impossible task for one federal agency to do that. But with regard to China, in a nutshell, China has no respect for our law and our regulations when it comes to the FDA. It was really shocking to see the former FDA commissioner 2 years ago, March 2023, tell Congress that China was blocking FDA inspectors from traveling to that country because they inspect the facilities. It was blocking them, not transparent. Big problem.
Okay, Rosemary, hang on for 1 second. I'm going to hold you through to the 6 o'clock hour. A blockbuster report, as only Rosemary Gibson can give. I'm going to have to drill down into this some more. It sounds like the drugs coming into the country from China are not properly inspected. And where they are inspected, they're found wanting. Now, who would ever think that the Chinese Communist Party would be part of some sort of system that sent defective goods to the United States of America, including the White House? Who'd have thunk it? Into our military. Short commercial break. Leave you with the right stuff. Rosemary Gibson on the other side, and we're going to talk about Netanyahu's visit. Kind of a surprise, I think, to him about how advanced the discussions are with the Americans and the Persians. Direct discussions, negotiations, sounds like. Also, some blockbuster news on artificial intelligence, all next hour in the War Room.
America's Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored.
And it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Getter.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Getter chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Getter friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth,
and we're doing it on Getter
every single day.
So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. and the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. You know this, Wired to Fish Coffee is not only the official coffee of Just the News, it's my favorite coffee. Knock Dunkin' Donuts out of my house. After 3 decades, go try a cup today. You're going to get hooked just like I was. Go to Wired2Fishcoffee.com. Use the promo code Just News at checkout. You get 10% off, including on their 2-pound inflation-busting coffee bag. Go check it out. All right, an extraordinary day today. We're only less than a week into President Trump's tariff policy, and already significant progress. Yeah, the markets went down, then they bounced up. They went all over the place. At the end of the day, the Dow settled in at a little bit better situation than the rest of the week. But more importantly, more than 50 nations, 50 nations, have already contacted the White House, including the European Union and others, seeking to have a deal. Already, these tariffs are having a huge negotiating impact for America. The opportunity to save significant money for the American taxpayer, for the American worker on the horizon as a result of this. Also today, the president had the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin